I flew halfway across the world to meet my online girlfriend after a year of daily chats, but she panicked and left me alone most of the trip. After a year of daily phone chats, I took a plane overseas to see my internet girlfriend. However, she suffered from panic episodes when we first met, forcing me to spend hours every day by myself in my hotel, until I was forced to leave. Since I honestly don't know what to think anymore, I, 29 male, need to get this off my chest. For backstory, I met this girl, 29 female, a few years ago in a Discord server where we both played a game thanks to some online pals. We immediately clicked since we had similar hobbies and senses of humor, and I was astonished by her professional ambition. She is quite passionate about her work, which is tech-related, I don't want to be too specific, and she is constantly discussing projects and other relevant topics. We increased the frequency of our conversations, and eventually we were chatting for hours every day. We occasionally had phone chats with other people, but once everyone else left, we would continue to talk until around 3 in the morning. To be honest, it didn't feel like the previous internet connections I had. One evening, when discussing films we enjoyed, we discovered that our tastes were nearly the same. We began using one of those sync services to watch content together. When she informed me she had feelings for me early last year, everything changed. She kind of blurted it out when we were on a video conversation, saying she had been feeling that way for some time but was afraid to speak because of the distance. We had been flirting a little, so I wasn't entirely shocked when I informed her that I was also intrigued. Our internet time together increased even further. Sometimes she would even hold her phone up so we could communicate digitally while she was cooking or doing anything else. Before deeming us official, I ought to have been more explicit about what I required, but I was in the heat of the moment. Even through a screen, there seemed to be a very unique vibe between us that is difficult to describe. To be honest, I hadn't connected with someone like that in a long time. Where I live, I've had a very blank dating life. It wasn't long before she began calling me her boyfriend in conversations with others close to her. She would tell me stories about how her mother would inquire about me, or how she would bring me up to her coworkers. Examples such as, "My boyfriend said the funniest thing today," or, "My boyfriend and I are going to see this movie this weekend." These statements were flattering, but I always believed that we needed to meet in person before formally committing to a relationship. However, it was definitely a mistake on my part that I never really corrected her. I suppose I assumed we would meet soon enough, and didn't want to offend her. We discussed getting together several times. She takes medication for a chronic health condition, and has rather severe anxiety difficulties. Although it makes traveling difficult, it doesn't truly affect her day-to-day existence. We decided that seeing her in Canada would be more sensible for me than having her visit the United States. Additionally, it's not exactly stress-free to cross the border with all the political outcries going on right now. I won't get into politics here, but it's true that crossing borders is more difficult these days. I made the bold decision to plan a trip to see her around Christmas. Flights and a hotel cost far more than I should have, but I thought it would be worth it. Due to the short notice, the flights alone cost over $700, and the accommodation for 3 nights cost an additional $600. To be honest, I could hardly afford it. However, I had been saving for some time and felt that this was crucial. After all this time of communicating, I was rather eager to finally see her in person. In the days before the trip, we discussed it virtually daily. She also appeared excited, however she admitted to being anxious about her nervousness getting the better of her. When we first met, she informed me she had been discussing anxiety management techniques with her therapist. That gave me hope that she was making preparations to ensure the visit would be successful. She even compiled a list of the locations in her city that she wished to show me. I had every reason to believe she was as excited about this as I was, as we discussed visiting a museum she loves, and a few places she thought I might enjoy. I just got back from that trip this past weekend, and I'm still getting used to it. Actually, I've spent the majority of my frigging time here in my hotel room, where I'm composing this. I flew all this way to see the city, but I have hardly seen it yet. The trip got off to a rough start. After landing, I took a 40-minute Uber to my hotel, which cost about $60 because, of course, everything in this place is pricey. I was anxious as well. I've only visited Canada a few times. I've never been to this city, and I was going to meet someone I'd only ever seen on a screen. The entire Uber ride made me feel nauseous. She was replying to my constant texts with updates on my whereabouts, but they came out as hurried and tense. Since I was also anxious, I assumed she must be experiencing even more worry, so I made an effort to be understanding. I assumed she would be prepared to meet when I arrived at the hotel. She lives about 5 minutes away from my lodging. Even though that hotel was more expensive than others, that was one of the reasons I chose it. She had said that staying nearby would make things easier for her. I messaged her to let her know I was ready anytime she was, checked in, and showered a little. I waited after that. She texted me instead of coming over, stating she needed more time since her anxiety was so bad. I made an effort to be sympathetic. I was aware of the seriousness of her concern. However, it took her an additional 2 hours to summon the bravery to visit me. I was sitting in my hotel room, checking the window every now and again, wondering if this whole trip had been a mistake. I attempted to watch TV, but I was unable to concentrate. At one point, my flight had been so early that I nearly fell asleep. She was actually trembling and crying, like sobbing, when she eventually arrived. It felt weird at first when I went down to the lobby to meet her. I sensed her trembling as we hugged. The fact that everyone in the foyer was staring at us added to the unease. She nodded when I proposed that we head up to my room so she could relax in peace. She sobbed for about 10 minutes straight while sitting on the edge of the bed in my room. Other than sitting next to her and giving her the occasional pat back, I had no idea what to do. She nodded when I asked if she wanted any water, so I retrieved some from the bathroom sink. She apologized perhaps 20 times after appearing to cool down a little. She insisted that she had been all right until she really had to come meet me, and that she had no idea why she was feeling so nervous. After a while, she appeared to be well enough for us to speak. At first it was awkward, not at all like our casual online chats. But after a half hour or so, she proposed that we visit her. There, she claimed, I would be able to meet her brother, and she would feel more at ease. She and her brother reside in a modest home approximately 5 minutes' drive from my hotel. Her brother appeared to be a cool, amiable, gaming kind of guy. They also have a very adorable black cat who insisted on attempting to sit on my lap. As I had anticipated from our video talks, their apartment was tidy, yet lived in. Even though we spent some time hanging out at their apartment, she remained really nervous the entire time. Sometimes she would get silent, and I would catch her staring at nothing, as if she were deep in meditation. Her brother made an effort to assist by carrying on the discussion, and inquiring about my flight, job, and other matters. Although it was kind of him, I became aware that I was speaking to him more than to her. She stated she was too anxious to drive, but she did say she wanted to take me around and show me parts of the city. She stated she was feeling too overwhelmed, and that perhaps tomorrow would be a better time. But I did suggest that perhaps we should all go, with her brother driving. She simply phoned me by Uber to return to my hotel at the end. Total time spent together on the first day, no more than 3 or 4 hours. She spent the majority of that time there with her brother as well. Around 9 o'clock, I returned to my hotel room and just collapsed. I was worn out after the day's emotional roller coaster and the journey. In addition, I had been awake since around 4 a.m. for my journey. She replied, "Sleep well. Sorry today was rough. Tomorrow will be better, I promise." I tried to concentrate on that promise as I drifted off to sleep after sending her a good night text. I got up really early the following day. I don't know, jet lag or whatever. I had nothing to do at around 7 in the morning. She normally sleeps in because she works nights, but I was just waiting to hear from her while I sat in my hotel. Despite my hunger, I didn't want to go too far for fear of receiving a message from her. In the end, I ate a terrible and expensive breakfast at the hotel restaurant. I just waited and waited after that. I took a shower, watched TV, browsed social media, and made a quick call to my mother. She eventually messages me 4 hours later to let me know that she's awake but not quite ready to see me, because she's still feeling nervous. She said that she simply needed some time when I asked if there was anything I could do to help. I thought there might be less pressure if we met in a public place rather than her coming to the hotel. "Maybe," she responded, "but I'm not sure yet." Said she would notify me shortly. I tried not to show my frustration at this point, but I was becoming rather annoyed. In order to have something to do, I decided to pick up some items from the drugstore that was within walking distance. I bought some Tylenol because I was about to have a headache, some food, and a portable toothbrush because I had forgotten mine. I was mostly simply passing the time. I discovered a small lunch area close by after spending far more time than was required exploring the pharmacy. Perhaps bringing her something to eat would be a kind gesture, so I thought I could get lunch for the two of us. After getting sandwiches for the two of us, I returned to the hotel to leave my belongings before visiting her. I messaged her to let her know that I had gone to get lunch and to ask if I could come over right now. After 15 minutes or so, she responded, "Sure, I could come over." I took the food to her apartment after calling an Uber. We were about halfway through day 2 when I eventually arrived at her apartment, which was approximately 2 hours later, and she hadn't even eaten the food I had brought. She thanked me for thinking of her, but claimed she wasn't hungry. I made an effort to hide my dismay. At least it wasn't wasted because her brother took the second sandwich. We spent some time sitting in their living room chit-chatting. She appeared slightly less nervous than she had been the day before, but not entirely at ease. She tells me that she, her brother and I, are going to a get-together with a number of their friends, just as I was beginning to believe that perhaps we could actually do something together. I came all this way to spend time with her, so I was a little taken aback, but I reasoned that maybe having other people there might make her feel more at ease. She replied that we would only be there for a few hours when I questioned how long. She replied that it was at her friend's house, which is a bit outside of the city, when I inquired where it was. I was disappointed, even though I attempted to appear excited about it. I had not anticipated our first actual day together looking like this. The drive there took roughly an hour in the end. I sat in the rear and she sat in the passenger seat while her brother drove. For most of the ride they discussed people I didn't know and inside jokes that I wasn't involved in. She would sometimes attempt to explain things to me, but it was never the same. I primarily just took in the vista outside the window, which was rather pleasant. There were about 10 people at her friend's house when we arrived. In fact, all of her friends were incredibly kind and hospitable. They were all aware of me. She had apparently been discussing this visit for weeks. She introduced me to everyone as her boyfriend, and it felt perfectly acceptable. It was a good celebration. Good food, a few beverages, and people playing board and video games. Everyone was polite and constantly approached me to chat. After hearing so much about me, a number of individuals expressed their happiness at finally meeting me. According to one female, "She never shuts up about you." Which, considering how little time we'd really spent together since I came, was both flattering and perplexing. Although we didn't really converse much, we stayed there for the majority of the night. She was off playing games with someone else or dragging me into discussions with her pals all the time. It was strange. We were usually in different areas of the room, despite my repeated attempts to stand close to her or get her attention. At 10 o'clock at night, we finally began to return. Given that she typically stays up until 3 or 4 in the morning, I assumed we would still have plenty of time to spend together. Perhaps we could just sit and chat like we used to do online, or we could watch one of those movies we were always discussing. She then asks her brother in the car if she can drive me to my hotel before they leave for home. According to her brother, "Sure." I'm sitting there in disbelief. She just met her boyfriend in person, who went across the country to see her, but she's too exhausted to spend any real time with him. When she glanced back at me for confirmation, I said, "Sure, that's fine," because I had no idea what else to say. Most of the drive back to my motel was quiet. She mentioned her anxiousness had been playing up more than usual lately, and once apologized for being so strange. It wasn't actually okay, but I told her it was. Could I say anything else? I couldn't really make her want to hang out with me. She said goodbye with a short hug and promised to text me in the morning when we arrived at my hotel. I felt completely whack when I went up to my room. After another few hours of hardly communicating on day 2, I began to believe that this entire vacation had been a huge mistake. Thus I find myself back in the hotel room, completely bewildered and alone. Even though my girlfriend is only a few minutes away, I'm alone in a strange country, and haven't really spent any time with her alone. I attempted to watch a movie on my laptop but was unable to concentrate. I ended up aimlessly browsing social media until around 1 in the morning. I was concerned that texting her about it might exacerbate her worry, so I refrained from doing so. However, I was also at a loss about what to do. I felt like I had met everyone in her life except for my real girlfriend by the time I was scheduled to have dinner with her family the following evening. I eventually texted her to let her know how I was feeling. I tried to be straightforward but gentle. I acknowledged that worry was difficult, but I was disappointed that we hadn't been able to spend more time together. I brought up the fact that I had come all this way to visit her, and that it bothered me that she seemed more at ease with me in public than with me alone. I made it clear that I was merely perplexed and a little depressed about the circumstance, not angry with her. When she finally reacted, it was a wall of text and took over 20 minutes. She apologized profusely, stating that she wanted to make the trip worthwhile for me, but was simply too exhausted, and that her anxiety was still through the sky. She made an effort to reassure me that she still had a strong interest in me, but she claimed that she is too anxious, and that nothing would happen if we were by ourselves. It seems that this is difficult for her because she hasn't been in a relationship for a few years. She clarified that when there are other people present, she feels more at ease since she is not under as much pressure to be fascinating or amusing. Claimed that she is constantly concerned that I am evaluating her, or contrasting her with her online persona. She added that she fears physical contact after a long period of time, and worries that I have unrealistic expectations for her. I informed her that there are several steps between an embrace and anything more serious, and that I wasn't anticipating anything intimate or physical. In fact, I haven't even given her a hug this trip. I simply wanted to talk to you and hang out with you like we do online for some real quality time. I told her that I wasn't traveling this far for sex. I finally got to meet the person I've been corresponding with for months. That appeared to relieve her, and she said that after meeting her mother, we would spend some time together. She mentioned that her mother was very excited to see me and that perhaps we could return to my hotel to watch a movie or something after supper. I accepted the plan since it seemed better than nothing. That night I couldn't sleep. I continued to reflect on the entire circumstance and question whether I had made a grave error in interacting with someone who suffered from such extreme anxiety. That seems harsh, and I don't blame her for having mental health problems. That's not her fault. But I began to question if I could handle the difficulties of a long-distance relationship. My last day here is today. Tomorrow morning I will depart early. This entire trip has seemed like a huge waste of both money and effort. Instead of spending most of my visit sitting by myself in a hotel room, I wanted to spend time with her. Since we don't have much time together, I genuinely assumed she would want to spend every moment with me. We've been discussing this vacation for a while, so I thought it would be rather different. After this, I'm not sure if this relationship can last. Am I going overboard? I understand that anxiety does exist, yet it seems pointless that I've come this far. Update. Several days have passed since my return, and because many people have been inquiring about what transpired, I thought I should provide an update. In the comments, several of you were really critical. Yes, I am aware that anxiety is a real illness. I am not a sex-crazed guy who was merely attempting to hook up. Furthermore, I don't believe she was taking advantage of me or anything similar. You folks come up with some crazy hypotheses. For those who are wondering why I didn't just go explore the city by myself, the answer is that I did some exploring, but it wasn't the main goal. I wasn't a tourist who traveled so far. To spend time with her, I went. In any case, I made the initial post on the last day of the trip after waking up quite early. After that, I anxiously awaited her message. Once more I didn't hear from her for a few hours. When she did text, it was a bit after noon. I had been up since about 8 o'clock, so I spent an additional 4 hours sitting in my hotel room, checking my phone like a teen in love every few minutes. She said I could take an Uber to her apartment at any time, and reminded me that we had supper with her mother later that day. Many of you advised me to simply call off the dinner plans, but I chose to go ahead and see how things worked out. I mean, I might as well meet her mother since I'd already traveled this far. I quickly showered, changed into my clothes, and went to her house. After the previous days, I was a little nervous, but I tried to remain optimistic. It was a pleasant difference that her brother was out when I arrived. Although she still appeared a little anxious, she was unquestionably less anxious than before. In fact, we watched things together for a while. We sat side by side on her couch after she recommended the show she had been eager to see with me. We sat close and it felt more like the quality time I had been hoping for, because she looked to be having a better day in terms of anxiety. It was pleasant that she even leaned slightly against me. We didn't actually engage in any physical activity. After some time, her brother returned home, although it was unquestionably better than the days before. She told me more about her friend's remarks about us at the party, and we discussed some of them. It sounded more like our internet chats. We began preparing to go have dinner with her mother at around 5 o'clock. This caused me some anxiety. It's usually a huge deal to meet the parents, and I wasn't sure what to anticipate considering how the journey had gone so far. I could sense that she was agitated once more as she drove us to the restaurant. I made an effort to divert her attention by keeping the conversation light. It was a charming, tiny Italian restaurant. When we got there, her mother was already there. As soon as she noticed us, she got up and hugged her daughter before turning to grin warmly at me. They have the same eyes, so I could tell right away where my girlfriend acquired her appearance. Her mother's dinner went unexpectedly well. Her mother was approachable and inquired about my work and family without being overbearing. Her mother looked sincere in her excitement about me and her daughter being together, and we clicked immediately. My partner appeared more at ease throughout dinner than I had observed throughout the entire trip. She was grinning, contributing to the discussion, and even putting her hand on my arm to emphasize a point. When we left, her mother hugged me, which was wonderful, and said I could come over at any moment. Even though I wasn't sure whether there would be another time at that moment, it felt good. We returned to her apartment after dinner. Although her brother was present, it felt more private because he tended to stay in his room. It was much the same as before. Hanging out, talking, and watching things. It felt more one-on-one than before, yet it wasn't quite alone time. Was this trip's final day what I had anticipated? Not at all. However, it was unquestionably superior to the initial days. She offered to drive me back herself, which surprised me because I was half expecting her to call me an Uber again as the evening wore on. It seemed like a minor triumph. We discussed the trip on the way back. I made an effort to be understanding when she apologized once more for the way things had gone. She acknowledged that I wished we had more time, like today, and suggested that since the first meeting was over, perhaps next time would be simpler. She accompanied me to my room when we arrived at my hotel. She assisted me in making sure I hadn't left anything in the bathroom or drawers when I was packing for the early departure. Despite its simplicity, it had an intimate feel that most of the tour had not. We kissed goodbye as she was ready to go. Just a good kiss goodbye. Nothing fancy. No makeout. It was short but sweet, and it got me thinking about what the journey may have been like if we had arrived at that moment sooner. After she went, we exchanged a few texts. She stated she wished we'd spent more time together, and I was getting ready for bed because my flight was so early. She said that although she had purchased a frame for a photograph of us, she had come to the realization that we hadn't really taken any quality group photos. The handful we had from the weekend didn't really fit her needs because they were primarily group photos from the party. That really disappointed me, so I suggested that perhaps I should simply take an Uber back, so I could get a decent photo. After 10 minutes or so without hearing back, I assumed she had either fallen asleep or became distracted. Then she texted me out of the blue to tell me to come downstairs. She explained that she had driven all the way back to the hotel, anxiety be damned, she said, just to take a picture and kiss me goodbye. At first I didn't understand. She was indeed in the lobby as I rushed downstairs. In addition to taking selfies, we also asked the night cashier to take a few group photos. Then we kissed again, more deeply this time. She gave me a tight hug, and said in a whisper that she was happy I came, but that the weekend wasn't what we had expected. Of the entire visit, that particular moment at the conclusion felt the most genuine and connected. I got up really early the following morning in preparation for my journey. Shortly after returning home, she must have texted me to wish me a safe journey. The return trip went well, giving us plenty of time to reflect about what had transpired, and what it meant for us moving forward. Overall, I'm going to maintain my optimism, even though it wasn't the ideal weekend I had hoped for. I believe that the decision to shorten the vacation was probably a mistake. Given her anxiety problems, 3 days isn't really enough time to get to know someone. Perhaps the last several days could have resembled that last night more if we had had a week. Since I returned, we've texted daily, and it's been nice to get back to our casual discussions. I've tried to be encouraging without being pushy, and she's been more forthcoming about her anxiety and the things that make it worse. In their upcoming appointments, she stated that her therapist wants to focus exclusively on her relationship anxiety, which seems like a good start. When she has to choose whether or not to travel down here for an event that is taking place sometime this summer, we'll see how things work out. I believe that will be the true test. I'm going to have to reevaluate if this can work in the long run, if she can't bring herself to come see me. However, there may be hope for us if she manages to make the trip, and things turn out better than they did this time. To address a few points raised in the comments, she does take medication and see a therapist, albeit a very new one. She has struggled with anxiety for many years, and it won't go away on its own. I wouldn't often be interested in a long-distance relationship, but our personalities and hobbies complement each other in ways that I don't often find with others in my area. And to everyone who thinks I'm being foolish or naive, well, maybe I am. I think that people should be given second chances, particularly when it comes to mental health. She wasn't attempting to ruin the weekend, really. She was obviously dealing with a serious and challenging issue. Whether we can discover a path forward that benefits us both is the question. I appreciate all of the feedback and suggestions on the first post. The next trip is in approximately 2 to 4 months, so I'm not sure whether I'll update again, but then I'll know for sure whether this can work or not. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. My parents threw me out for my pregnant sister on my 18th birthday, but karma struck back spectacularly at her wedding. Allow me to illustrate the dynamics of my family for you. My name is Deborah, and I was born into a family who publicly called me their midlife mistake. My dad, Michael, 65 million, is a middle management who never challenges my mom, Karen, 63, who is a career-obsessed corporate juggernaut. Then there is my sister, Jennifer, 32F, who has never given a damn about me and is 14 years older than me. I was an unwanted surprise when I entered this world. When mom found out she was pregnant at age 45, she initially assumed it was menopause. She desired an alternative answer, but by the time she met a doctor, it was too late. My arrival wasn't the consequence of a loving parental decision, based on what I've pieced together from overheard discussions and family whispers. I spent more time in the hospital than at home because I was born prematurely and had multiple health problems. Mom never paid much attention, constantly saying she had meetings that were too important to miss. Dad and my Aunt Rachel alternated in keeping an eye on me. Aunt Rachel has become the family's saint. Rachel was there, speaking encouragement through the incubator while my mother was probably closing deals. "You're going to be just fine, little one. You're stronger than you know." I still think about those words when things get hard. Upon my eventual release from the hospital, my grandfather George took over once more. After determining that our home was insufficient for 2 children, he purchased a brand new 5-bedroom mansion with an enormous backyard in one of Boston's greatest neighborhoods. However, the emotional gap in that home could not be filled by any amount of wealth. The immaculate white carpeting, high-end furnishings, and carefully chosen artwork made growing up there feel like living in a museum. I knew right away that I wasn't a part of the display and was an unwanted artifact. When I was 5 years old, I have one of my best memories. On this Take Your Child to Work Day, my classmates were all thrilled to go to their parents' places of employment. Mom gave me a look that made me feel foolish when I asked if I could go with her. "Don't be ridiculous, Deborah," she yelled. I chose to spend the day with Aunt Rachel at her comfortable painting studio instead, saying, "I have important meetings all day. You'd just be in the way. Besides, the office isn't a place for children." She gave me permission to paint, displayed my creations on her walls, and gave me a sense of importance. My haven was school. In an effort to avoid returning home, I threw myself into my studies and joined as many clubs as I could. "Such a quiet, well-behaved child," my teachers would say, praising me. They had no idea that I was afraid of being a burden at home, which is why I behaved well. Even during her brief holiday visits, Jennifer's lack of interest was evident, even though she was already enrolled in college when I entered elementary school. During the holidays, she would come in and tell me about her wonderful college experience, without mentioning me other than to gripe about how her old room had turned into my messy kid space. Grandpa George did his best to make up for my parents' lack of interest. Every few months, Dad would travel from Canada to visit, always bringing thoughtful presents like art supplies, books he knew I would enjoy, and other items that demonstrated his genuine interest in me. However, his presence was insufficient to address the underlying dysfunction in our family dynamic. In essence, Mom's approach to parenting was to spend money on issues and hope they would go away. Lessons in dance? Yes. Tutoring in private? In any case, attending my performance or parent-teacher conferences in person? Sorry, important meeting, can't reschedule. I received the same apathetic reaction for every accomplishment I made. "That's nice, dear. Dad wasn't much better. Now please be quiet, I'm on a call." It turned out that his promise to Mom that he would assist her with me if she chose to have me was a hoax. He was never too tired, or too busy, to hang out with me. I once tallied how many times he used his favorite phrase, "Not now, Deborah," in a single weekend, 17 times. I can still recall my 10th birthday. Naturally, Mom and Dad forgot. Without even asking what I would desire, they hurriedly ordered a pricey cake and threw money at me when Aunt Rachel reminded them. Jennifer never gave a call. The only actual celebration took place the next day at Rachel's house, when she set up a small gathering with homemade cake and decorations that she knew I would adore. I became increasingly aware of the truth of my circumstances as I grew older. I pieced together the facts from bits and pieces of drunken confessions and whispered disputes that I shouldn't have overheard. When I was 12, I overheard my parents arguing about me one evening. Mom, who was likely drinking her third glass of wine, said, "She's just so demanding. Needing something, always wanting attention." I did not sign up for this. "How do you want me to handle this?" Dad retorted. "We can't really give her back." I began spending much more time at Aunt Rachel's after that. Her modest yet comfortable home became my actual residence. She would listen to my issues, help me with my homework, and teach me how to cook. All of the duties that parents are expected to perform. On the weekends, we would work on creative projects, bake cookies, or simply chat about life. She would inquire about my aspirations, anxieties, and future goals, things that my own parents never bothered to find out about. As the years passed, the gap between my life at home and my time with Rachel grew more pronounced. I was Debbie at Rachel's, loved, respected, and heard. I was Deborah at my parents' house, the misfit, the trouble, the unwelcome one. I discovered how to exist in these parallel universes, flipping between them like a television channel. Naturally, Grandpa George noticed. In order to guarantee that I would have assets of my own when I turned 18, Dad began making direct deposits into a private account on my behalf. With a knowing expression, he would say, "Just in case." I didn't realize at the time how prophetic those comments would turn out to be. The world can be unpredictable. It's interesting how life can throw you a curveball when you least expect it. When my parents dropped a bombshell on me, I was 18, counting down the days until I could leave for college, and struggling to get by each day in the emotional wasteland that was my home. "Deborah," Mom continued in a very upbeat tone, "we have amazing news. Jennifer, your sister, is pregnant and getting married. We're going to be grandparents," Dad added with a foolish smile. Wondering why they were telling me this as though I should be ecstatic, I forced a smile. "That's fantastic," I said. Mom went on, "We're going to be very busy preparing for the wedding," oblivious to my lack of excitement. Their eyes flitted to my bedroom door, and then all of a sudden everything fell into place. Jennifer and her husband will need space for the baby when they move in with us after the wedding. It all made sense. The measuring tape I had seen in my room, the whispered discussions I had been overhearing, and their strange interest in my college aspirations. They were preparing for my departure as well as Jennifer's return. I realized that the upcoming weeks would be a game changer as I stood there and saw their faces light up at the thought of their real family getting together. I had no idea how drastically those changes would occur or how karma would soon make a big appearance in our family's drama. Update 1: How my parents officially erased me on my 18th birthday. Allow me to explain how my parents formally removed me from their lives on my 18th birthday. Aunt Rachel prepared her customary birthday pancakes and gave me the most considerate presents, including books, art tools, and a lovely handcrafted photo album of our times together. I spent the morning with her. Grandpa George was the true surprise. I initially assumed he was just being protective as usual, but now that I think about it, it seems like he knew something was coming. He had sent me the newest smartphone along with a letter that read, "Keep it handy and document anything important." When I got home to join in the celebration, he also requested me to participate in a live video call. I was unaware that I was going to document the proof that would make all the difference. I started the live video with Grandpa at noon and went home while talking to Aunt Rachel about my morning. Something didn't feel right when I opened the front door. There was an odd fragrance of fresh paint in the air, and the house was eerily quiet. My pulse began to race as I ascended the stairs to my room. Something was clearly off. I always left my door open, but now it was closed. I nearly dropped my phone in horror when I turned the handle. My room was no longer my own. After being covered in my photographs and artwork, the walls were recently painted a gentle shade of blue. An ornate white crib had taken the place of my bed. Teddy bears were all over the place, and where my desk had been, there was a rocking chair. To fit the nautical theme, even the curtains had been changed. I heard footsteps behind me at that moment. My parents were shocked to discover me filming as they came out of their bedroom. "Deborah," Mom said sternly. "Why are you in this place? Why are you taping too?" I was still processing the whole deletion of my existence, so I hardly paid attention to what she was saying. My room. What happened to it? Where are all my belongings? Dad nervously cleared his throat. You see, Deborah, we've made the decision to give your sister's child this room. Because it has the most natural light, it's ideal for a nursery, and our first grandson deserves the best, he said. With a beaming passion that I had never seen directed at me, Mom interrupted, saying, Jennifer is expecting a boy, the son your father has always desired. It seemed as though someone had punched me in the stomach. However, where should I sleep? Where are my belongings? With a dismissive gesture toward the stairs, Dad remarked, Oh, we packed up your stuff. The garage is where the boxes are. When you depart, you ought to bring them along. Go, my voice broke. Leave, what do you mean? I call this place home. Mom's phony grin wavered. Deborah, you must comprehend, dear. There just isn't room for you here anymore, especially with Jennifer and her husband moving in and the baby on the way. Furthermore, you should learn how to support yourself now that you are 18. What I was hearing was unbelievable. No, I murmured, my voice wavering. No, I won't go. I also call this place home. You can't just ignore me like I don't exist. Mom finally lost her temper and said, For heaven's sake, Deborah. Avoid being tough. This is about family, not about you. I am a member of your family. Tears were flowing down my face as I yelled. I am your daughter. My birthday is today, and you're throwing me out. Did you not even realize it was my birthday? Dad rolled his eyes. Is it your birthday? Is it the purpose of this outburst? We have no time for such nonsense. Their indifference struck me like a blow to the body. Mom looked anxiously at my phone, which was still filming everything, while I was crying. Stop causing a commotion, she growled. The neighbors will listen. Well done, I fired back. Give them permission. Make it clear to everyone your true character. Dad's fingers dug cruelly into my arm at that moment. He snarled, That's enough, and pulled me to the stairs. Leave right away and don't return. After a last shove, I was on the front porch with my stuff in hurriedly packed boxes. With a finality that reverberated in my bones, the door slammed behind me. I'm not sure how long I sat there crying, but Grandpa George's voice finally broke through my tears. Are you there, Deborah, my love? I witnessed everything. Don't worry, we'll resolve this. For now, go to Rachel's, shall we? And be careful with the video. Having witnessed the entire event via Grandpa's shared live broadcast, Aunt Rachel was already waiting at her door when I got there. For the first time that day, I felt secure as she drew me into a strong embrace. Rachel insisted that my birthday be celebrated. She ordered my favorite meal, invited some of my closest friends over, and made every effort to make the day memorable. We all understood, however, that this was about more than just a botched birthday celebration. It was about my whole existence being completely upended. Grandpa George sent me an email that night when I was lying in bed in Rachel's guest room, which she started referring to as my room right away. He had a strategy, and his lawyer had saved and certified the live stream footage. He wrote, The wedding is in 3 days. Be prepared. Karma occasionally requires a little assistance to get going. I didn't realize at the time how correct he was, or how spectacularly karma was about to hit. Update 2, Jennifer's wedding is the target of karma. Aunt Rachel demanded that we go to Jennifer's wedding even though we weren't invited. She helped me into a gorgeous blue frock she had purchased for the event and remarked, We have every right to be there. Besides, we were specifically invited by Grandpa George. As soon as we walked into the reception area, I saw Grandpa. I felt uneasy since he was sitting at a table close to the front, looking sharp in his pricey suit. His exact plans were kept a secret from me, as he wanted to be prepared for some justice. As my parents had imagined, the ceremony itself was picture perfect. In her expensive gown, Jennifer looked stunning, and her new husband appeared to be a kind guy, although a little overwhelmed by the extravagance. Throughout the ceremony, Mom and Dad looked like the ideal family they had always envisioned, beaming with delight. As my parents worked the room throughout the reception, boasting about their expecting grandson and pregnant daughter, I observed from a corner table. They presumably hoped we wouldn't cause a commotion by deliberately placing us at the farthest table. If only they were aware of the impending danger. Grandpa George abruptly rose up during the celebratory supper as the congratulatory remarks got underway. The astonished best man handed over the microphone to him as he marched to the front of the room. There was silence in the room. He opened with the serene authority that only comes with age and wealth. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to disturb this happy occasion, but there is a serious injustice that must be addressed. I have never seen a takedown as deliciously vicious as the one that followed. Grandpa meticulously described every aspect, from my parents' early denial of my existence to their recent eviction on my birthday. On the projection screen in the reception area, he presented a few selected segments from the live feed, allowing everyone to see their actual hues in high definition. He roared, "These people threw their own daughter out like garbage on her 18th birthday to make room for their new grandson. Keep an eye on this." The film showed Dad's physical aggressiveness and Mom's contemptuous cruelty. The guests' faces shifted from bewilderment to surprise to indignation. In fact, a few of Mom's best friends stood up and left. As she watched, Jennifer's mascara trickled down her cheeks, making her new spouse appear more uneasy. Grandpa wasn't done when Mom, her face flushed, tried to intervene. His voice was as frigid as ice when he turned to face my parents. "Let me state this unequivocally, I am altering my will. I will give Rachel and Deborah every money I have. Jennifer, Karen, and Michael, you're all totally disconnected. The investment accounts, the trust monies, everything, disappeared." The outcome was instantaneous chaos. Mom cried out in a choked voice. Jennifer wept about the future of her unborn child as Dad's face became a frightening shade of purple. The biggest surprise, though, was when a number of Dad's business associates got up and walked away, pointing out their business cards to Grandpa as they went. As you can see, my parents were unaware, or had conveniently forgotten, that Grandpa was not only rich but also a significant investor in a number of businesses, including the one where Dad worked and many of Mom's most important clients. Grandpa had a significant impact on both their business and social networks. Mom's well-cultivated social circle started apologizing and departing as we watched. Suddenly, Dad's coworkers were unable to look him in the eye. Jennifer's in-laws appeared to be having a heated argument while gathered in a corner. When Jennifer's new husband got up and declared he needed some air, it was the last straw. He still hasn't returned. He is reportedly speaking with divorce attorneys because he doesn't want to be associated with a family that has such a well-publicized problem. The best thing, though, is this. Do you recall the business cards that people were giving to Grandpa? As it happens, a number of Dad's colleagues had been searching for fresh investment prospects. By the end of the evening, Mom's clientele was beginning to appear extremely slender, and Dad's business had lost 3 significant investors. Grandpa smiled at me contentedly as we walked out of the celebration. Letting people ruin themselves is sometimes the best kind of retaliation, my love. All I did was make sure their audience was appropriate. Since then, my parents have been bombarding my phone with frantic messages about understanding, forgiveness, and family. They even attempted to break into Rachel's house yesterday when they arrived. I made the decision that enough was enough at that point. After glancing at Rachel, I made the choice that would alter everything. "I want you to be my legal guardian," I replied. Our lawyer claimed it was almost a slam dunk with the video proof we had, and the paperwork was already underway. The reputation of Mom and Dad was in ruins. Their financial future appeared bleak, and they had been abandoned by their social group. At the time, Jennifer was residing with our parents. Her idyllic life was falling apart around her, and she was being shut out by her husband's family. As they say, karma is a wonderful thing. Tomorrow, I'm going to file for a restraining order. It should be an easy win because of the video proof of Dad's physical assault and their emotional abuse. If we wish to pursue a civil complaint, our attorney thinks we have sufficient funds for one as well. Grandpa George wasn't joking when he said that karma needed a little assistance occasionally, but it was worth every tear I ever shed because of my parents to see their meticulously maintained facade fall apart. Third update. I'm finally prepared to discuss how the wedding went, even though the effect has been utterly devastating. Karma did more than simply strike back. It composed a symphony of justice that would make any fan of vengeance cry with delight. Let's begin with the court case. Only 2 weeks after the disastrous wedding, the court hearing for Rachel's guardianship and my restraining order was set. My parents appeared in their most favored role, that of loving, worried parents who only wanted their daughter back. They had even engaged a public relations consultant to assist them develop their image, giving them advice on how to come out as contrite. The sight in the courtroom was unreal. In contrast to her typical power suits, Mom dressed her best concerned mother attire, complete with natural makeup and modest jewelry. In fact, Dad had a new haircut and, of all things, a Bible with him. They had even brought in character witnesses, mainly well-off friends, who were prepared to attest to their commitment as parents. They weren't ready for what we had though. In addition to the birthday video, our lawyer provided years' worth of financial documents that demonstrated how they had misappropriated the assistance funds that Grandpa had been sending for my upbringing. As it turned out, they had been transferring the majority of it, more than $200,000, to their personal investment accounts and Jennifer's trust fund. I will never forget the judge's expression as the footage was being played again. She even halted the proceedings to inquire if I wanted to file criminal charges when it reached the point when Dad physically pulled me out. I refused. It was enough torture to watch their world fall apart. She was adamant, nonetheless, about sending the case to the district attorney's office for examination. For my parents, the judge's decision was terrible. In addition to being given full guardianship, they were mandated to reimburse Rachel for all of the money that had been embezzled from her support, plus interest. They must keep at least 500 feet away from Rachel and myself, according to the restraining order that was granted. However, that was only the start of their demise. Do you recall the wedding's business contacts? They were rushing, not simply walking away. After a number of investors left, Dad's company carried out an internal audit, which revealed several dubious choices he had made. He was relegated to a role with little actual authority or client contact, but he wasn't dismissed outright. Interns now share a cubicle with the man who once held the corner office. Even more spectacularly, Mom's career collapsed. Her once advantageous reputation as a brutal businesswoman was now viewed differently. Clients canceled contracts citing ethical concerns when the video of her ruthlessly evicting her own daughter went viral in local business circles. She now reports to someone who was once her junior associate after her corner office was moved to a cubicle 3 floors down. The social repercussions were just as disastrous. Following a particularly contentious board meeting where the video was aired, their membership in the country club was cancelled. To get away from them, old friends crossed the street. Their names inexplicably disappeared off the donor wall when their church requested that they take a break from committee work. In little than a month, the meticulously crafted social standing they had spent decades cultivating fell apart. Things haven't gotten much better for Jennifer. 2 weeks after the wedding, her husband filed for divorce, citing fraudulent misrepresentation of family character. She continues to live with our parents, using department store maternity clothes in place of her fashionable pregnancy outfit. My former room, the nursery they so brutally evicted me for, is now empty and underused, while her ideal suburban dream has degraded into sharing her old adolescent bedroom with her expectant child. The impact on finances has been enormous. Grandpa George wasn't threatening the will in a meaningless way. He essentially moved the majority of his assets out of my parents' grasp by having his attorneys create an irrevocable trust for Rachel and me. They have now received eviction papers from the house they reside in, which is officially held by one of Grandpa's businesses. While the investigation into the stolen support monies is ongoing, their investment portfolio has been placed on hold. They made every effort to turn things around, including offering treatment, making heartfelt apologies, and even trying to buy Rachel's neighbors to spy on us. They sent their lawyer to negotiate last week, seemingly ready to forgive me if I could persuade Grandpa to restore their inheritance. It was almost impressive how bold they were. For my part, things has taken a surprisingly positive turn. In what is now officially my permanent residence, Rachel and I share a home. We've painted my room in my favorite colors, hung my artwork, and made it genuinely so it's no longer just a guest room. Rachel even assisted me in creating a fairy light-equipped reading nook near the window. I feel like I have a true home for the first time in my life. Grandpa George established a substantial college fund, and I've received acceptance offers for the next autumn semester from multiple universities. I'm going to study psychology with a focus on family trauma therapy because, well, I might as well apply my life experience. I've already begun assisting other teenagers from toxic homes deal with their circumstances by working at a nearby youth shelter. The amount of support I've received has been tremendous. It seems that many people in similar circumstances found resonance in my narrative. I've started a blog to chronicle my healing process, join support groups, and gain new friends that can relate to what I've been through. The texts I get every day from people going through similar things give me hope that all of this suffering can lead to something positive. Yesterday, my parents' most recent attempt to get in touch was a formal letter from their lawyer threatening to sue me for defamation if I don't take back my false accusations. Our lawyer actually chuckled when he read it, but he also reminded them that we have everything on video and that the truth is an absolute defense against defamation. As I reflect on the last 3 months, I've come to the essential realization that sometimes the family you were born into isn't the one you were intended to be with. I learned what unconditional, encouraging, and respectful family love looks like from Rachel and Grandpa George. They have only ever asked for my pleasure and well-being in exchange. To everyone who helped me along the way, you have no idea how much your messages, counsel, and experiences have aided me. The Reddit community turned out to be a surprising wellspring of knowledge and courage. You showed me that standing up for myself wasn't selfish and that I wasn't wrong to ask my parents to have basic human decency. There is hope for people who are still stuck in unhealthy familial environments. Create a support system, keep track of everything, and never forget that you deserve better. Being related by blood does not give someone the right to mistreat you. Those who don't love you well don't define your value. I've legally changed my identity, I have a real home, and I can finally control my future when I start college in the fall. Karma rolls hard, but occasionally it needs a little prodding. I'm sure my folks are reading this, so I hope it was worthwhile. You lost the daughter you never cared to adore as well as everything else because of your ideal family image. Reddit, I appreciate you sharing in my path to liberation. Pursued my dream as a photographer, lost my parents' support, until they learned about my six-figure income. My parents went completely crazy when I decided to try my hand at fashion photography instead of attending college after high school. For months, we quarreled over this. Ultimately, they informed me that they would never forgive me and would stop interacting with me if I chose to go down this route rather than earning a college degree. Knowing that my connection with my parents was not my top concern at the moment, I did not let that deter me. My goal was to become a fashion photographer, and I did just that. They were furious with me and avoided talking to me for a few years. I found it really challenging, particularly because I was so young and needed assistance from other family members. Most of the assistance I required was monetary. I had only ever worked summer jobs part-time before, and the money I had saved was insufficient to support myself in a new place. I was in dire need of help because, at the time, I was an intern and didn't get paid much. Fortunately, my dad's older sister, my aunt, frequently sent me the money I needed to pay my bills. Naturally, my aunt had a soft spot for me because I had always been close to her daughter as a child. Even with her help, I occasionally still felt very alone. After I left home, my brother and dad began to act as though I didn't even exist, so I didn't have the support of my immediate family. Because it would cause friction between them, my aunt never disclosed to my father that she was providing financial support for me. Without a doubt, he would blame her for pushing me to make poor choices. In spite of this, my aunt informed me of my parents' reactions to my decision. She would always bring me up to them when she saw them, but they would usually still react negatively. It was discouraging to hear them abruptly shift the subject. Then, one year, they suddenly demanded that I spend the holidays at home so that we could get back in touch. In the end, I returned that year to try again with our relationship. They were pretty normal about the whole thing, which surprised me because I had expected an emotional reunion. My mother later informed me that they knew I wouldn't alter my mind, so they made the decision to get in touch with me. Furthermore, they didn't want to be seen as the type of parents that didn't encourage their kids' goals and aspirations because that would come across negatively. I came to see that rather than truly respecting my choice, they had only contacted me to protect their brand. Despite my disappointment, I made the decision to keep in contact with them in the hopes that they would someday reconsider their opinion of me. They have never seemed to be as proud of me as they are of my brother, even though I have told them about all of my successes over the previous few years. After earning a business degree, my brother began working with a friend of my dad's. He makes a nice living, and my parents are always boasting about how he started providing for them as soon as he started working. I did offer to assist them monetarily, so it's not that I hadn't. But because of my unusual line of work, they turned me down, saying they wouldn't feel comfortable taking my money because they weren't sure I could live comfortably without it. I was aware that this was not a sincere worry. It served as just another reminder that they didn't think I was performing well enough and would much rather rely on my brother. I was never going to be good enough for them, no matter what I did. They relied on my brother instead of believing me, even after I assured them that I was okay and could help. It wasn't like they didn't require assistance. They have been having financial difficulties for the past few years, particularly following the pandemic. About 2 years ago, my parents had to close the cafe they owned and retire early because of significant losses sustained during the pandemic. My brother began providing them with financial help at that point. It was quite offensive that they refused to assist me in spite of this. I stopped insisting on staying in contact with them after that. The only times we would see each other were at family gatherings, where I would try to be as polite as possible. Since I knew they wouldn't value me, I even stopped spending the holidays at home. Rather, they would take advantage of the occasion to criticize and ridicule my decisions. I was done with that negativity. I no longer needed it in my life. Since then, our relationship has gotten much worse, and we hardly ever communicate. Because I dislike discussing it, very few family members are aware of my feelings. My cousin, who recently got engaged, is one of the few who does. My family was invited to her engagement party a few days ago, but I was also invited. Regretfully, my illness prevented me from attending. After years of not speaking to me, my parents finally called me while I was away because of a chat my cousin had with them. I need to explain what my cousin told me before I talk to my parents about the phone call. As soon as I finished talking to my parents, I contacted my cousin to talk to her about it. She informed me that my parents had been boasting at the engagement party about my brother's big promotion at work and how he would now be making nearly twice as much as he had before. My cousin claimed that it was starting to irritate her. I'm not sure if that's accurate or if they were exaggerating. In addition to making the entire celebration about themselves, they were utterly disregarding the fact that I, their other kid, was succeeding in her life on par with, if not better than her. She was aware that, despite my best efforts to pretend otherwise, my connection with my parents clearly had an impact on me. Even though I had accomplished a lot, I felt like I could never do enough to make them proud of me. I found that to be really distressing. My cousin chose to defend me since she was aware of this. My relative mentioned how wonderful it was that they now had 2 children earning 6 figures annually as my parents were boasting about my brother. My parents, who hadn't bothered to stay in contact with me over the previous 2 years, were understandably startled. Since I didn't think it was necessary, I had never disclosed my income to them. My parents called me the following day after my cousin dropped that bombshell without providing any further details. I was taken aback when they called. They inquired as to whether I had been making 6 figures annually and whether I had been doing so for a number of years. Thinking they were finally calling to congratulate me and express their pride, I made the decision to be honest with them. They said they couldn't believe they had been forcing my brother to provide for them financially when I had been doing so well, which was really foolish and delusional of me. They had the gall to become upset rather than happy for me. They chastised me for not informing them of my earnings sooner so they could make an informed decision about which child should provide them with financial support. I couldn't speak. In retrospect, that was exactly the reaction I should have anticipated, but it was not the one I had anticipated. Let me tell you what occurred next if you think that's awful. My parents began to explain how they had put a lot of pressure on my brother when I didn't reply. They said that he had been too busy providing for them to save enough money for his own future. They maintained that I should now pay $100,000 in reparations to help even things up because I hadn't been burdened in the same manner. They rationalized it by claiming that they were also my parents and that I had to share my brother's responsibility. They made it seem as though I had been avoiding accountability, utterly disregarding the fact that they had initially turned down my assistance. After giving their request some attention, I erupted in laughter and hung up. The scenario was so ridiculous that it was the only response I could summon. I then gave my cousin a call to get the whole narrative and to double-check the information. I have been deliberately avoiding my parents ever since. After the call, I banned their number, but they began texting me from a burner phone, which I also blocked. In every one of their mails, I was accused of concealing my earnings. They said they would never have requested my brother for help and would have accepted my help instead if they had known about it sooner. Recently, I also received a text from my brother, who usually avoids similar situations. He stated that he thought our parents had a point, but he didn't want to pick sides. He acknowledged that they ought to have been more encouraging and that they had mistreated me. But he also said that I should have told them exactly how much I made rather than leaving them in the dark if I really wanted them to accept my assistance when I first offered. He maintained that they couldn't have known I was doing so well for myself because this isn't a career they understood well. He said that he had been the only one providing for our parents up until this point and that he thought it only right that I do the same. I owe it to them because they reared me, he reminded me, and whether I like it or not, they are also my parents. I'm bewildered now. I'm sorry for my brother, but I'm not sorry for my parents. Although we haven't had a fantastic relationship, it hasn't been as horrible as our relationship with our parents. He could have a point though, and I can't deny that. Is it bad of me to keep my actual income a secret from my parents? Edit. Since people are curious as to why I never told my parents how much I made, here's the answer. First of all, I dislike discussing my income. I want people to trust me when I tell them that I have enough to aid them, especially my parents. Why would I pretend that I had the money to provide for them? Second, money isn't the only metric I use to gauge my achievement. For me, success is about following my dreams and realizing them, not about how much money I make. When I first began out, I felt just as accomplished since I had followed my passion and defied the odds. In addition to being wealthy, I wanted my parents to be proud of me for being content and successful in my line of work. Finally, I never realized that in order to get their approval, I would have to be specific about my salary. I suppose I've had some delusions about them throughout my life. Eventually, I thought they would treat me the same way they treated my brother, but that never materialized. Before any of this occurred, I did discuss this with my cousin, who informed me that I shouldn't have needed to disclose my income to my parents in order for them to treat me like their child. At least someone was on my side, so it was a tremendous relief when she told me that I hadn't done anything wrong. Additionally, I am positive that my aunt shares my cousin's viewpoint. But what really irritates me is that my brother, who had previously been impartial, is suddenly opposing me. I'm open to any suggestions you may have because I haven't decided whether or not I should feel bad about it. First update. Hello, I appreciate all of your remarks. I suppose I needed that because going through them was a true eye-opener for me. Actually, I had started to think that perhaps I was mistaken, but I no longer believe that to be the case. I blocked my brother as well after realizing that, despite his initial neutrality, it had not aided me in any way. Unlike my aunt and cousin, who both defended me, he never did. In all honesty, my brother is only supporting my parents today because they have never given him a reason to oppose them, in contrast to me, who undoubtedly has a number of reasons. I responded to his message prior to blocking him. Although he didn't grow up in the same household as me, I informed him that I still respected the idea that he was making the extra effort to defend our parents. He can never really comprehend what I've gone through since the parents he knows are so different from the parents I know. His statement that I owe it to our parents to assist them, whether I like it or not, was incredibly unjust. I owe them nothing, nothing at all. Anything they did for me prior to my 18th birthday was required by law, not as a favor. I left home to pursue my aspirations as soon as I was no longer a minor. They didn't support me or even spoke to me for the next few years after that. My aunt, not my brother or my parents, had supported me during that period. My cousin provided me with emotional support the entire time. As a result, I seldom ever think of my brother or parents as family because they have never supported me. My aunt is the one person I owe the most. My brother has been providing for our parents alone for the past few years, and I don't blame him for that. It's not that I didn't offer assistance, in fact, I did, but they turned me down. I decided to cut them out of my life because of that. They also didn't appear to be in any worse shape without me. They haven't apologized to me, but now that they know how much I earn, they expect me to make it right. That's entitled and unfair, and I don't think I have to put up with it. I decided I didn't want to talk to my brother anymore after sending him that message, so I blocked him as well. Neither my brother nor my parents have messaged me since. My aunt, however, got in touch with me and informed me that my brother must have forwarded my message to my father. I had stated in the mail that my aunt had helped me out when my parents hadn't. My father went crazy over it, as we had anticipated, and started blaming my aunt for misguiding me. He thinks I wouldn't have deviated so much from my parents if my aunt had never encouraged me and had instead advised me to return to them and follow their rules. He maintains that we would have a far better connection now if it had occurred. To be honest, I have no idea why someone would think this. In all honesty, I would have found another means to follow my aspirations even if my aunt hadn't assisted me. I would not have abandoned them. I wouldn't be earning as much money or enjoying my career as much if I hadn't been able to pursue a career in photography. Rather, I would be angry at my parents for preventing me from pursuing my own interests. How would our relationship be enhanced by that? It would have significantly worsened the situation. My aunt is currently being used as a scapegoat, which seems to be all they need. They have been accusing her of being a bad sister in their constant messages. They say that instead of supporting me, she would have persuaded me to return to my parents if she had been a decent sister. My present bad behavior, which they say has always been praised, is attributed to her. They have even implicated my cousin in this, claiming that it is not surprising that she has become impolite and uncultured. They contend that because my cousin called them out at her engagement party, this illustrates my aunt's incapacity to raise children appropriately. My parents are essentially acting irrationally. My aunt is certain that they won't let this go, despite the fact that she has barred them. They are intent on making a big deal out of it and playing the victim in a predicament they started. I truly don't know what else I can say to my brother if he still believes that supporting our parents is appropriate in light of everything that has happened. I suppose I should have anticipated it. Perhaps this isn't unexpected because, although he never mistreated me, he also never defended me. Second update. Hello, I haven't posted anything for the past 2 weeks. My parents made the decision to make this drama public for some reason. They have posted a number of posts disparaging my aunt and myself in the last several days, and I honestly have no idea what they are trying to accomplish. They have been promoting a biased narrative in these posts. They say that despite the fact that photography is an unsteady career, my aunt pushed me to pursue it against their wishes. They also claim that I rejected their attempts to patch things up with me. They claim that when they recently requested financial assistance from me, I ostensibly offered but minimized my income. As a result, they had to rely on my brother, which has had an impact on his financial security. I'm still refusing to assist and placing all the weight on my brother, even though they're acting as though they just recently found out the whole truth about my financial status. A large portion of their story is false, and it is entirely biased. I don't want to interact with them on social media, and neither does my aunt. We've been attempting to get in touch with them privately to request that they remove the posts. I even warned them that if they didn't comply, I would get legal help. But, because no one is going to waste their money on a lawyer for something like this, I suppose my parents can see I'm bluffing. This is a minor nuisance, but it's not like it's having a significant impact on me. Many people, including those I haven't spoken to in years, have contacted me to inquire about the issue. The way they are handling this as a show bothers me a lot. I want my parents to remove their posts because I may have to share my side of the story with my aunt if they don't. Asking them to remove the posts hasn't worked at all thus far, but neither of us wants to do that. We might eventually have to publicly present our case. We should go ahead, according to my relative, but I'm sick of anticipating all the drama that will ensue. In any case, we must take the necessary action. Third update. My last post was 2 days ago, and as I previously stated, we were at a loss on what to do. In the end, my aunt and I posted the truth, not just our version of events. In order to dispel my parents' biased story, we wanted to correct the record. My parents haven't made any public remarks about it yet, but many people have left encouraging remarks. The rest of the family hasn't been as ignorant as I initially believed, it turns out. Many of them have observed throughout the years how my parents have been more publicly proud of my brother and have always treated him better than I have. Getting all of this support makes me very happy. At least I now know that, in my heart, they supported me, even though they had never previously spoken out about it. That is reassuring. But when my brother sent me an email, his reply wasn't encouraging. I was advised that what I was doing was seriously messed up. He claimed that he had been attempting to manage the problem with our parents and had nearly persuaded them to remove their posts. However, they are now refusing to do so because I posted my side. He claimed that I wasn't the kind of person who would add fuel to the fire and stir up more controversy. He's correct. I didn't want to make things worse, but I had no other option. My brother has treated me unfairly, in my opinion. This was started by our parents, not by me. I only spoke the truth to avoid needless hatred toward my aunt and me. It's possible that my parents should have considered the repercussions before making such a fuss. I don't think I have anything further to say to my brother at this time. It is obvious that he has chosen a side, and it is not mine. In any case, I had no desire to communicate with my parents. I don't mind at all if they all want to completely cut me out of their life. Fourth update. Hi everyone, my last update was quite a few months ago. I recently returned home to attend the wedding of my cousin. As her maid of honor, I performed all of my responsibilities for her for about a month before the wedding. She informed me that neither my brother nor my parents had received an invitation. They shouldn't have been surprised by this because it was obvious that neither my aunt nor my cousin wanted anything to do with them following the events of a few months earlier. I don't see why my parents thought they would be invited, when they hadn't even tried to apologize to any of us following the incident. They were not just disappointed that they hadn't received an invitation, but they had also expected one. They even came to shout at my aunt when she was at her residence. My father was incensed and informed her that she couldn't abandon him for such a little matter. Coming from a dad who essentially pulled his daughter out of his life, that is rather ironic. My aunt quickly put him in his place after putting up with his antics. After a heated argument that day, my parents are now ranting about us to anyone who would listen. I don't think anyone is taking them seriously, though, as it looks like the most of them are just looking to gossip. My brother has not gotten back to me. Although it is unfortunate, he has made the decision to support our parents. Everything went off without a hitch, and the wedding was stunning. The icing on the cake was that I also got to spend a lot of time with my aunt and cousin. I've returned to work after a much-needed vacation. Knowing that my parents haven't altered at all in all these months is comforting. My sister accused my husband of an affair, and my parents believed her. 2 years later, her fiancé exposed her lies and cheating. My sister told my parents that my husband had an affair with her, and they believed her. 2 years later, her fiancé discovered she was cheating and that she had made up the entire narrative. It's difficult to know where to begin, but I feel compelled to get this off my chest and, maybe, find some clarity. I apologize if this comes across as rambling. There is so much to unpack. Hopefully, you people can point me in the correct way because I'm at a loss. I am 30 years old and have been married to the love of my life, Jake, 34, for 8 beautiful years. We have 2 lovely children, a 6-year-old girl and a 4-year-old son. Life was very close to perfect. We had a comfortable home, a consistent schedule, and a profound bond that I believed was unbreakable. Our days were filled with the normal ups and downs of family life, but I couldn't have been happier. But everything changed 2 years ago, thanks to my older sister Lily. Lily, who is also 34, began on a similar route to mine, but our lives have taken completely different twists. To put it mildly, her relationship history has been fraught with difficulties. She had been alone for a long time, and there was a very good reason for it. As much as it pains me to admit it, Lily is a bit of a red flag in terms of relationships. Her actions can only be described as those of a neurotic narcissist. She has a history of destroying her relationships, frequently driving people away with her unstable and deceptive behavior. Lily's relationships always seem to start out well, but they never last. She has a habit of becoming very intense too quickly, and then things begin to unravel. I've seen it happen several times. She'll meet someone, they'll begin dating, and then she'll start picking fights over little matters or become so possessive that the guy feels suffocated. Soon enough, it's over, and she's left wondering why she can't find someone who will remain around. It's difficult to witness, especially since Lily frequently takes her emotions out on me. She would come over to my apartment and complain about not being able to find a man like Jake. There was clearly a great deal of resentment. She'd say things like, "You found a man? Why can't I find somebody like Jake?" I tried not to take offense since I knew she was in a horrible place, but it was difficult not to feel like her words were aimed at me. Despite everything, I still love my sister. I'd always hoped she'd find the man of her dreams and be happy. I even tried to set her up with Jake's friend once, thinking they'd make a wonderful match. But Lily's unusual and unsettling actions rapidly put a stop to that notion. She was so severe and dominating that I recognized it wasn't worth jeopardizing our friendship for her. Despite all of this, I remained hopeful that Lily would finally find happiness. Unfortunately, it was evident that Lily did not feel the same way about me. Jake and I had a big family cookout at our parents' house 2 years ago to celebrate our 6th wedding anniversary. It had been a while since the entire family had gotten together, so everyone was having a great time. Our children were playing with their relatives, and the air was full of laughter and happiness. It was one of those rare moments when everything seemed perfect, and I was surrounded by the people I cared about the most. As the evening progressed, Lily took me aside. At first, I assumed she was going to make me a heartfelt anniversary wish. She complimented me, and I thanked her, shocked at her genuine tone. I asked her what she'd been up to lately, and because I knew she had a new boyfriend, I also questioned about that. But instead of the pleasant conversation I expected, Lily's tone shifted. She gazed at me with peculiar intensity, and the next words she said caught me completely off guard. She stated that after Jake and I married, they secretly had an affair for a period. At first, I thought it was a weird joke and chuckled, but Lily was dead serious. She claimed that after the wedding, Jake continued texting her, and what began as benign, getting-to-know-you exchanges quickly evolved into intense emotional conversations. According to Lily, Jake told her that he and I were constantly fighting and bickering about minor issues. She claimed he'd ask if they might meet, which is when the affair allegedly began. Her statements made me feel ill. I couldn't believe Jake, who had always been committed to me and our family, would be unfaithful. Lily explained that she had kept this a secret all along but could no longer pretend. The way she delivered it, so quietly and confidently, shook me to my core more than the actual news. I briefly considered all of the possible options. Did Jake actually cheat on me? And with my own sister? Were we supposed to be separated now? How about the kids? It took me a while to process my ideas, but then I asked Lily if she had any proof that Jake couldn't get away with lying. That is where she faltered. Lily said she had a lot of evidence, but as her sister, I should believe her, with or without it. That's when I realized, Lily was lying. She could trick mom and dad, but I had been watching her for years. I could immediately detect when she was lying. She burst into tears when she realized I could be onto her. Then came her lecture, which included comments like, "I cannot believe you don't trust me," and "I told you for your own good." Lily then went on to tell our parents the same tale. Soon, all of our friends and family surrounded us, and Lily began shouting at Jake about how he had cheated on me with her. She even alleged that, despite her refusal to participate, he blackmailed her. My hubby was just as perplexed as I was. At first, he assumed this was an unfunny joke. However, when Lily began screaming like crazy in front of everyone, the situation became quite serious. I hoped my folks would assist me with damage control. After all, even if Lily's narrative were accurate, I would have been crushed. To my amazement, my parents sided with Lily without regard for our circumstances. Dad screamed at Jake, accusing him of playing with Lily's feelings. I felt abandoned. My own sister confessed to me that she had an affair with my husband of 6 years. Even though I knew that wasn't true, no wife enjoys hearing this type of thing. Furthermore, if her narrative was true, my father was more concerned with Lily's feelings than my own, A wife and mother who would have lost her husband. When we got home that day, Jake and I talked about everything. I trusted my husband and knew he would never betray me. Before you think I'm gullible, let me warn you that Lily has a history of lying. She has previously wrecked countless relationships with petty lies. In truth, Jake's pal ended their relationship because she accused him of cheating on her at random. She would set her own belongings throughout the apartment and then ask him about if he had brought any other girls. This would lead to screaming bouts, and when he was fatigued, Mom would tell him it was just a test. The situation with us simply confirmed this was a trend for Lily, so I chose to believe my husband. The next days were the worst of my life. My parents refused to hear our side of the tale, preferring to trust Lily's version without any evidence. Our previously close-knit family was broken. Jake and I found ourselves alone, and the atmosphere at family gatherings grew unpleasant. My parents treated me with distrust, while Jake was completely ignored. Lily, on the other hand, appeared to delight in the turmoil she had caused. She played the victim, taking up the attention and pity of everyone around her. It was as if she relished witnessing the devastation she had inflicted in my life. The more I attempted to defend myself and Jake, the more she distorted the story to portray us as monsters. I attempted to contact my parents to explain that there was no proof of Lily's assertions, but it was ineffective. They'd made up their minds, and their commitment to Lily was solid. Mom even accused me of being in denial and choosing Jake above my own sister, which shattered my heart. I couldn't comprehend how they could so easily abandon me, how they could blindly believe Lily's falsehoods. Eventually, the tension reached its breaking point. Jake and I made the difficult decision to detach ourselves from my family for our own mental health and the sake of our children's well-being. It was a difficult decision, but we couldn't keep living in the shadow of such a painful falsehood. This eventually became our new normal. As I mentioned, it was difficult but not impossible. I recognized that I didn't need my parents' approval for everything in my life, and if they wanted to believe Lily's lie, then so be it. But just when I thought the drama was over, something happened to shake things up again. I came across a post on Facebook unexpectedly, and guess what? Lily became engaged. She had shared a series of photos with her new fiancé, a man named Mark, along with a lengthy, heartfelt caption about how she had met the love of her life. She told how Mark entered her life at what she believed was the most difficult time she had ever experienced, a time of pain and betrayal. Ironic, eh? Reading those sentences caused my stomach to churn. The hypocrisy was staggering. Lily had portrayed herself as a victim, employing the same lies she had spoken to elicit compassion and admiration from our extended family and friends. As I browsed through the comments, I noticed that many of our family, who had largely supported her during the turmoil, were praising her and extending their support. Some even made snide, passive-aggressive statements addressed directly at me, such as, "Good for you for getting past that toxicity. You do not need that in your life." It was infuriating. These folks had no idea what had transpired, yet they were ready to congratulate Lily on her alleged courage and tenacity. I felt a similar sensation of betrayal, not only from Lily, but from the entire family, which had decided to believe her falsehoods without questioning. It felt as if they had entirely eliminated me from their life, while continuing to support someone who had only caused grief and destruction. What concerned me even more was Lily's engagement to a man who had no notion what kind of person she was. I couldn't help but feel sad for Mark, knowing that he was being deceived by the same lies that had destroyed my family. I wondered whether Lily had ever told him the truth about what she had done, or if she had continued to weave her web of deception to trap him as well. I was tempted to reach out to Mark and warn him about Lily's true personality. But I immediately realized that it was not my place to meddle with their relationship. Mark would have to discover the truth on his own, just like I did. Still, I couldn't ignore the sense of dread that came with knowing Lily was once again manipulating those around her for her personal gain. In the days that followed, I tried to get the news of Lily's engagement out of my mind, but it was difficult. Suddenly, I began to notice a series of missed calls from an unknown number. I ignored it at first because I assumed it was spam. But the calls kept coming. I didn't have time to pick up because I was so busy with work and kids. Finally, during a break at work, I decided to respond. On the other end of the line, I was welcomed by a screaming Lily. She hurled every insult and slur she could think of at me. It was like a torrent of rage, unfiltered and untamed. I tried to ask her what was going on, but she refused to let me speak. After what seemed like an eternity of listening to her rant, I was finally able to convince her to pause long enough to explain what had happened and why she was so angry. There was a little hush on the other end before she screamed, "How could you claim to be innocent after what you've done?" Before I could react, she hung up. I was left in a trance, trying to make sense of what had just occurred. My mind was spinning with options, but none made sense. What could I have done to make Lily so angry? I had stayed out of her life, given her the privacy she clearly desired, and done nothing to provoke her. I could only think of one person who might have some insight into this situation: my Uncle Tom. He was one of the few family members I still communicated with, and he was always a voice of reason in the midst of the insanity. I called him, thinking he could shed some light on the situation. Uncle Tom did not disappoint. When I recounted what had transpired, he revealed what Lily had cleverly left out. Apparently, her fiancé, Mark, had called off the engagement. What's the reason? He had discovered the alleged affair between Lily and Jake through family rumors. Mark, being the wonderful guy he was, had been looking into a disagreement he had spotted between Lily and myself. When Mark found out about the affair, he was naturally outraged. The trouble was that he didn't realize it was all a lie, a fiction Lily cooked up to seek attention and sympathy. Things took an even more dramatic turn just before the engagement was called off. Mark, Lily's fiancé, had sensed that something was wrong with their relationship. Lily's unpredictable conduct had caused some concerns for him, and he couldn't escape the suspicion that there was more to the story. Mark, motivated by his suspicions, decided to check Lily's phone. What he discovered shocked everyone: Lily had been cheating on him. She'd been meeting up with a guy she met on a dating app, and their interactions weren't simply casual chatter. Mark, who was wealthy and seemed ideal in Lily's eyes, was someone she refused to lose. Lily had no choice but to come honest. She admitted to Mark that she had no affair with Jake and that the entire thing was made up. But, rather than saving her relationship, her confession backfired. She did not deny having discussions with the guy on the dating app. Mark was horrified, not only by the affair, but also by the deception and the lengths Lily had gone to in order to carry it out. It presented Lily in an even more negative light, and Mark wanted nothing to do with her after that. After Mark called off the engagement, Lily's life began to disintegrate. Her lies were now public knowledge, and those who had previously backed her began to distance themselves. The folks who had previously believed her story about Jake and me now questioned everything. Their caustic remarks and supportive letters faded when they discovered the extent of Lily's deception. My parents, who had so easily chosen her side 2 years ago, were left stunned by the truth. Despite the remorse and sorrow I feel for my sister, I know that the best thing for my family right now is to stay away from all of this toxic drama. We've gone through enough, and now I need to focus on protecting my husband, children, and myself from future danger. I'm happy for the clarity that has resulted from all of this, even if it has been extremely hard to achieve. I'd also like to thank everyone who read my article and offered their support and suggestions. It's been a challenging trip, but strangers' compassion and understanding have helped make it bearable. I am grateful to you all for allowing me to see things more clearly and giving me the courage to do what is best for my family. Update 2. Hello, everyone. The last week has been quite stressful, so my family and I decided to take a much-needed mini vacation. It was a nice opportunity for us to clear our heads and refocus on each other after what had happened. I also spent some time reading over all of your comments on my prior postings, and I just wanted to say thank you. Your insights and encouragement have really improved my understanding of the situation. One thing that really struck me was the number of comments about Lily's weird fixation with my husband Jake. Now that you've brought it to my attention, I see that there were always warning flags, but I just didn't notice them at the time. When Jake and I first started dating, Lily had a lot to say. More than I expected. She would always call him brilliant and dashing, which looked like innocent praise, but they were frequently followed by comments that now seem strange, such as how I got him or how he was so out of my league. I dismissed it as her typical mocking, but thinking back, there could have been more to it. Anyway, going on, I must say that my parents have not ceased attempting to reach us. They've called and texted us hundreds of times, and while I'm still unhappy about what happened, I've decided to allow them to come visit us. I understand that their primary motivation is to visit the children, and I've accepted that. After all, I've decided that I would not deprive my children of their grandparents, even if I am not ready to fully reconcile with them myself. While my parents may not have been the best at supporting me, they have always been loving grandparents, and my children adore them. The visit will be difficult, and I'm still unsure how I'll react to seeing them face to face after everything that has transpired, but I'm prepared to try for the sake of my children. I will create limits and preserve my own mental health, but I cannot ignore the attachment they have with their grandparents. Hopefully, this visit will provide some clarity on how to go from here. Thank you again for all of your help and suggestions. I'll keep you posted on how things progress. Update 3. Hello everyone, I hope you are doing better. I wanted to provide an update on how things have been since my last post. My parents did come to visit us, and while I was concerned about how it would go, I have to admit it went better than I imagined. Things were awkward at first, as I expected, but my children immediately broke the ice. They were overjoyed to see their grandparents again, and their enthusiasm helped to alleviate the tension in the room. It was evident that they missed them as much as my parents did. As we settled in, the kids innocently asked where Aunt Lily was. It was a question I expected to come up at some point, and it elicited an uncomfortable stillness. We all avoided the subject at the moment, attempting to keep the atmosphere light. Later, while the kids were busy, I decided to ask my parents directly where she was. They informed me Lily had returned to their home after a long absence and wanted to apologize to me. I found it difficult to take it seriously, however. After everything she'd done, an apology seemed pointless. Furthermore, Mark, her ex-fiancé, deserved the most sincere apologies after everything she had put him through. I advised that instead of wasting time apologizing, they consider enrolling her in treatment. The way she acted, lying so brazenly and destructively, was not a simple mistake. She acted like a habitual liar, and at times, it appeared she was on the verge of being labeled a psychopath. Some may even claim she is one. If she is to heal from this condition, she must seek expert help. Interestingly, Jake and Mark have developed an unexpected bond throughout this process. They began hanging together and learned that they had many common interests. Jake keeps Mark informed about what's going on with us, and it's been great to see them both support each other in various ways. Mark, being the mature individual that he is, has begun to move on with his life. He did not deserve what he went through, but as humans, all we can do is move on and attempt to find peace. Overall, I believe we are on the route to a resolution. Things will never be the same, but I am hopeful that they can improve. If the world works in our favor, we may not be able to return to the way things were, but we may be able to reach a satisfactory point, one in which we can re-establish some trust and move forward without the weight of the past holding us back. We've learned the value of open communication, the perils of leaping to conclusions, and the strength of forgiveness, both giving and receiving it. While we are not completely recovered yet, we believe we are on the right track. Thank you again, Reddit, for your encouragement and guidance at this difficult time. Your opinions have been important in guiding us through this challenging circumstance. We'll continue to take things one day at a time, focusing on our mental health and our children's well-being as we move forward. My parents favored my twin sister. So much that they spent my wedding budget on her, so I cut them off after refusing my mother's selfish request. I, 23F, have a twin sister named Allison with whom I am not on good terms. I'm not even on speaking terms with her or my parents. Despite how I've been treated in the past, we used to be on good terms, but I've kept my distance for the last 2 years. They hadn't bothered to contact me either, until recently. Allison is 12 minutes older than me and is therefore the golden kid by default. My parents only wanted one child because that was what they had planned for, and they didn't have the resources to support two. By the time they discovered it was twins, it was too late, and my mother did not want to take any chances. In high school, I learned about this from my intoxicated uncle at a Thanksgiving celebration. That was pretty much the day I gave up trying to win my folks over. They did what seemed most natural in those circumstances. They had 2 children but chose to adore only one. That was Allison, not me. Allison and I had an incredible sibling rivalry from childhood. To impress our parents, I would try to outdo all she could do. But the more I achieved, the more they appeared to despise me for outperforming their golden child. To be honest, Allison had no interest in competing with me. She was only looking for validation. She claimed to be concerned about the rivalry, but her main skill was manipulation. She was brilliant at convincing people that she was offended when I outdid her. This resulted in many, including our parents, relatives, and even some classmates, supporting her feelings while tearing me down to help her feel better. Finally, the competition provided me with good grades and several extracurricular accomplishments to demonstrate my superiority. Meanwhile, Allison captured my parents' attention, affirmation, and sympathy. I was always cast as the villain, making her feel inadequate. Looking back, I don't think I'd swap what I've achieved, but I wish I had rubbed my success in her face more at the time. 2 years ago, we turned 21. By then, we'd both graduated. Allison from a conventional college and me from one of the state's best business schools. I was the valedictorian and received a scholarship, so my parents saved a lot of money on my education. Call me crazy, but I honestly believed my parents would be proud of me. They were not. Instead, they concentrated solely on Allison and her troubles. Allison had barely made ends meet and was looking for work, only to be turned down again. I, on the other hand, was already working from home as an intern for a corporation. Despite my accomplishments, my parents did not bother to congratulate me. Instead, They were absorbed with concern for Allison's future. I was not surprised, but rather disappointed. I was still living with my parents and hadn't saved enough money to move out, so I chose to keep my feelings to myself. But after our 21st birthday, I couldn't anymore. I expected them to accomplish something significant for us. However, the day before our birthday, I learned that everyone had left me at home alone. All they left me was a note saying they were going to the beach with Allison and her friends and would be back in a few days. I vividly recall being completely devastated when I read that note. They had taken Allison and her pals on a beach trip, but all I received was a happy birthday card and a $50 gift card. Many aspects of my childhood had been unfair, but here was where I drew the line. It was so disheartening and callous that I decided to leave that day and never look back. I had a few friends who were ready to let me stay with them until I could find and afford my own place. It wouldn't take long because the firm where I was interning was likely to recruit me full-time once the internship concluded. I only needed a place to reside for 2 months at the most. I packed my belongings and moved in with a friend without informing my parents or sister, and I have not looked back since. They didn't miss me enough to want me to come back. They did phone me on my birthday, the day after I moved out, but not to wish me. They said they'd be returning shortly and recommended I hire a plumber to fix the tap. I informed them that I was no longer living at home and had moved out, hoping that this information would elicit a response from them. But no such luck. My folks seemed fine with it, and Allison didn't mind. That was it. That was my final proper conversation with my family. Since then, I haven't seen them or heard from them again. My friends occasionally told me about Allison, which kept me up to date on her life, but that was about it. They knew nothing about my parents, and my parents knew nothing about me. I've worked hard for the past 2 years and finally got my own place. It's hardly a mansion, but it's a lovely apartment in a desirable neighborhood. The rent is reasonable for my wage, which is fantastic because most people my age haven't been able to accomplish this as quickly. I'm pleased with how my life has turned out, and I've done my best to keep my family out of my thoughts. Allison recently married a businessman nearly 10 years older than her and is now living it out in California. I thought everything was fine in my family until 2 days ago, when I received a call from my uncle. He told me I needed to come visit my parents right away because they had been in a terrible car accident and wanted to see me. I went to the hospital as soon as possible since, of course, I'm not so heartless. When I arrived, I discovered that they had already been in the hospital for a few days and were recovering from their injuries. A truck had hit their car. They had survived, but with significant injuries. They didn't have health insurance because my father had always believed that if we looked after ourselves, we wouldn't need to go to the hospital. This was by far one of the most ridiculous opinions I've ever heard. My parents immediately phoned my sister, but she informed them that she would not return or assist them. Apparently, it was tacky of our parents to seek financial assistance from her wealthy husband so soon after their marriage. She did not want her spouse to think she was a gold digger. She also didn't want to travel back since she couldn't leave her home and 2 children, who weren't even her own. They were her husband's children from a previous marriage, but she was too preoccupied with playing happy family with her husband's family to see her own parents in the hospital following a tragic automobile accident. She couldn't have helped, even if she had wanted to. Without her husband's assistance, she would not have been able to purchase even the flight tickets back home. After all, she's now a stay-at-home parent, caring for children who aren't her own. So much for being the favorite daughter and golden child. I couldn't believe they didn't even call me first. It became even more irritating when my uncle informed me that my parents now expected me to finance their medical expenditures. It's a large sum of money, and if I agreed, I'd have a difficult time recovering financially. I don't want to spend so much money, especially on people who have never cared about me or shown me love throughout my life. I know they have other family members that can care for them. Even if I don't pay, somebody else will. However, my parents appear to be more worried with the shame of begging others for money. They warned me that borrowing money from others would be more humiliating than borrowing from me because they'd have to repay it sooner than I would. That is what they said when they asked me to pay their debts. They even assured that I would receive my money back quickly. I do not know what to do. I'm in a bad situation. I can either disgrace my parents by refusing to pay their medical bills and focusing on myself, or I may pay for them, lose my money, and then wait indefinitely for them to repay it. To be completely honest, I don't want to help them at all. We haven't spoken in 2 years, and I've had a horrible relationship with my family for as long as I can remember. They're like strangers to me now, so I don't feel inclined to assist them. But if I don't help, am I no better than Allison? That would be difficult to accept. Is it wrong of me not to want to help my parents pay their hospital costs after such a tragic accident? Update number 1. Hello there, I've decided not to aid my parents. It was a difficult decision to make, but I was confident that their bills would be handled by someone else. They have nothing to worry about. They just contacted me because they didn't want to ask their other relatives. They were overly egoistic. I haven't told them about my decision yet. How do you tell your family that you're not going to help your parents pay for their medical bills after such a tragic accident? It's been nearly 5 days since I met them. After reading the comments, I realized I was still subconsciously competing with Allison. Because she didn't help our parents, I felt compelled to step up and prove that I was the better daughter, or whatever. I guess I'll never be able to get rid of that competitive streak, no matter how hard I try. It's simply who I am now. The majority of the comments criticized my parents' lack of health insurance, and I agree. It was quite silly of my father to discourage it. If I had been a part of their lives, I would have ensured they were insured. He didn't even have his automobile insured since he believed he was such a good driver. They're happy the collision was caused by the truck driver, since else they'd have had to pay for the auto repairs themselves. As for my parents' financial position, which many of you have inquired about, I would say they are fine. They are neither rich nor poor. My father is the head of sales at his company, while my mother works in human resources at a smaller firm. Their combined salary is sufficient to allow them to live well, especially since they are no longer responsible for supporting me or Allison. Allison and I did not have to worry about money growing up, but we also couldn't afford to live extravagantly. We were middle class, and my parents still are. I don't see why they can't pay their own medical bills. If they can borrow money and promise to repay it eventually, they will undoubtedly be able to pay their own debts. They haven't provided me a clear explanation for why they can't, and I doubt I will ever find out. Update number 2, I told my parents that I would not fund their bills. They had been contacting me for the previous week, and yesterday I knew I couldn't just ignore them and wait till they were released from the hospital. So I answered their calls and told them I'd thought about it and didn't feel compelled to help. As expected, they did not take it well. My mother tore into me, shrieking as loudly as she could with her broken ribs. She called me ungrateful and used the usual slurs. My father, on the other hand, just told me that I was no longer his daughter and hung up once my mother had finished yelling. It didn't hurt like I expected. Honestly, it had been a long time since I felt like their daughter. I can't recall when I last felt loved by my parents. They hadn't spoken to me in 2 years, on purpose, because I moved out after they snubbed me on a significant birthday. In many ways, I had never truly had parents. I'm just going to keep living my life as I have for the last 2 years, and maybe even before that. This decision has little impact on me, despite my parents' expectations. Unfortunately, after my talk with my parents, my uncle called to give me another earful. I hung up after a few seconds because I didn't want this from him either. They can think anything they want about me. It doesn't matter anymore. Later, my uncle texted me to let me know that my parents might still ask other family members for money. He also indicated that my parents had decided to use the wedding fund they had put up for me and Allison. They had already spent more than half of it on Allison's wedding, and what remained was squandered on a trip to Europe. That's why they had almost little savings left and couldn't meet their medical bills. So, the riddle is solved. Of course, my uncle told me all of this to make me feel terrible, but all I felt was relief that I hadn't wasted my hard-earned money on their expenses. They had carelessly wasted their own cash, which was not my fault. It was not my responsibility that they did not have insurance owing to their erroneous ideas. They could beg money from family or go to hell, but I was not going to give them anything. They were no longer entitled to anything from me, including my time and money. Update number 3. Hey, something pretty strange happened today, and I need to get it off my chest. I haven't been able to inform my friends about what has been going on, because most of the people I know have only known me for a short time. I don't think I want to share anything about my family history with these people, so Reddit is all I have. It's been about 2 weeks since I last spoke with my folks. Allison showed up at my apartment a few hours ago, around the evening. Her unexpected visit astonished me, first and foremost because I did not expect her to know where I lived. Apparently, one of our high school friends told her about the neighborhood where I lived, and she asked around to find out exactly where I was. That is a lot of effort for her to do simply to meet me, of all people. She looked and acted far differently than I remembered. She's gotten more polished and sophisticated, which is a significant change from the way she used to speak in high school. Now she sounds more ladylike and behaves better. Her fashion sense has evolved, as has her jewelry, and her makeup appears more sophisticated. It felt as if I wasn't even speaking to Allison. But one thing has not changed: who she is as a person. I guess you can't put cosmetics on your heart and instruct people to name it Mrs. Davis, as she did to herself. Her personality and ideas have undoubtedly not changed. She knocked on my door, and I let her in. I was startled to see her, but also interested as to why she had stopped by. I decided to hear her out. After some small conversation about her life, in which she unpromptedly told me everything she'd been up to and boasted about how wonderful her life was as a stay-at-home mom of 2 toddlers married to a wealthy man, I politely nodded through her presentation. She talked about how she had nothing to worry about but her cuticles and even began urging me to do the same, telling me how underappreciated being a traditional housewife was. I couldn't wait for her to stop chatting about extraneous topics and get to the issue. Finally, after roughly 15 minutes of talking about her life, she explained why she was here. Apparently, she had returned to see our parents since they had begged her to do so following the accident. They did not want her money. They simply wanted her to be there for them. After 2 weeks, she decided to return, and while she was here, she thought she'd pay me a visit so we could finally bury the hatchet. Thus far, so good. But then she began complaining. She claimed our parents were too needy and disrespectful of her new family. She went on and on about how she had to leave her 2 babies with their nanny merely to visit them. She stated she loathed our parents for forcing her to choose between them and her children. I can never understand why she keeps referring to them as her children when they are clearly not hers. They are her husband's children from his previous marriage. Even though I hadn't asked, she proceeded to tell me a lot about her marriage and spouse. According to what I gathered, Allison's husband most likely married her solely to boost his chances of obtaining at least partial custody of his children, which he accomplished. But she believed he loved her or something. He had been in a custody fight for a long time, and as a full-time businessman, he didn't have enough time for his children. His ex-wife was using this against him. Then he claimed that he was engaged and planned to marry as soon as the divorce was finalized, which tipped the scales in his favor. Allison told me all of this while gloating about how she saved those children. To me, it sounded like her husband had cheated her. They hadn't known each other for more than a year when he asked her to marry him, so it was obvious he wasn't in love with her. Nobody falls in love that easily, especially after a divorce. But Allison appeared blissfully unaware, or perhaps she knew he didn't love her but was ready to overlook it due to his large money balance. She seemed content being a glorified nanny to her husband's children. On top of that, she was upset with our parents for wanting her at their side after they had been in a tragic tragedy. She somehow believed that being there for them was detracting from her time with her new family, which comprised a husband who most likely did not love her and 2 children who were not biologically connected to her. These children appeared to be doing well with their nanny, just as they were with her. If ungrateful had a face, Allison would be it. I am not a fan of my parents, but when she mentioned how needy they were, I couldn't believe this was the lady they had repeatedly chosen over me. She eventually got to the point of her visit and informed me that she was departing in 2 days. She had promised Mom and Dad that she would remain for at least a month, but now she stated she was tired of hearing them talk about the tragedy and how it was the worst experience of their lives, for the 10th time. She stated she needed to return home soon. What is her solution? She asked me to reconcile with our parents and take her place. She did not want to feel terrible about leaving them when they needed her. She had no idea they had cut me off again because I refused to help with their bills, most likely because they don't talk about or think about me, so they didn't tell Allison. She came here for sympathy. She wanted me to feel sorry for her for having to deal with our parents and abandoning her family. She intended to use her pity to persuade me to step into her shoes and provide emotional support for our parents because she did not feel up to the role. It was typical Allison manipulation, but I'd known her techniques for too long to fall for them. I had no intention of telling her how I truly felt while she was in my home because it would undoubtedly lead to a fight. So I promised her I'd try, but I know I won't. She went after telling me to keep in touch, which we both knew she didn't mean. Honestly, I was relieved to see her leave. Not only is she a nasty and narcissistic person, but she is also really boring to talk to. I could barely say anything while she went on about her dull existence in California. Her life revolves primarily around parties, stepchildren, and her husband. She believes she is living a dream, but I found it depressing. Her husband clearly does not love her, and her children already spend half of their time with their mother. Of course, they'll grow up to prefer their biological mother over Allison, and they probably already do, based on what I've heard. But it's fine since she chose that life for herself. The life I chose for myself will be far away from my family, who are undeserving of even a quarter of my care or pity. If anything, today taught me that I was correct to distance myself from my parents and sister. I do not want to be a part of these people's lives. They're really selfish and vicious, and I doubt they're capable of thinking about anyone other than themselves, particularly Allison. I'm ashamed to be linked to such folks. At least now, I've been able to permanently cut links with all of them. It is unlikely that they will be able to contact me anytime soon. I blocked Allison as soon as she departed, and I've previously barred my parents and other relatives for a few days. I believe I am secure from being disturbed by my relatives in the near future. I'll pray that they don't try to contact me again after this, because I'm much better off without them. My parents gave me some money and kicked me out after my sister was born. 17 years later, they want my help. I am 35 years old and employed as a software developer at a large West Coast tech company. I've finally established a secure existence for myself after working in the field for almost 10 years, complete with a respectable salary, a cozy apartment, and even some future investments. I undoubtedly appear to be living the American dream from the outside. However, something that happened recently has been making me face my history, and I'm finding it difficult to deal with. After 17 years of total quiet, my parents, 60 million and 58 million, reached out to me and asked for my assistance with my sister, 13 million. You must be aware of our past in order to comprehend the significance of this. My parents never wanted me as a youngster. Before I was born, they had been trying for a daughter for years, and they were openly disappointed to have me instead. As a child, I frequently heard parents call me the spare, or a remnant in conversations with friends or family. We weren't impoverished because my dad was a real estate agent and my mom taught high school, but they always pretended that my presence was depleting their finances. I can still clearly recall family get-togethers where family members would try to persuade my parents to be thankful for their healthy son. I learned to keep quiet during these conversations, but my parents would still say things like, "Unless it's a girl, we don't really have a child yet." My aunt would say things like, "At least he's smart and well-behaved," or, "Many couples can't have children at all." Their remarks still had a profound impact, especially during family gatherings or holidays. I began to develop a strong interest in computers and programming in middle school. Using whatever resources I could find online, I would spend hours training myself to code in the school computer lab. After noticing my enthusiasm, my computer science teacher began to mentor me and even allowed me to stay after school to work on projects. However, my parents would either nod absently or shift the conversation to their ongoing efforts to have another child whenever I tried to discuss my accomplishments with them. When I was 15, everything changed. My sister was my parents' miracle child, finally born after years of trying. It was like a switch flipping in our home when she was born. There was love, excitement, and celebration all at once, but none of it was aimed at me. They gave her everything, including their time, money, love, and attention. Although I recognized that she was their top priority, the disparity in their treatment of us was unpleasant and striking. I can still clearly recall my junior year victory in a state-level programming competition. A minor college scholarship was part of the award. My parents were so enamored with my sister's block stacking that they hardly looked up when I brought the trophy and certificate home. However, her accomplishment of stacking 3 blocks on top of one another was worthy of a cake and photo celebration with the family. I pushed myself into my academics and coding at school because I knew that education was the key to my freedom. I began working as a freelance web developer on the side, keeping the money I made hidden because I thought I might need it in the future. That intuition was correct. In retrospect, I believe my parents had been preparing this for some time since, rather than throwing a party for my 18th birthday, they sat me down for what they called an important discussion. They clarified that my sister's playroom and learning area required my room. They had already made the decision that I would go right away. They completely shut me down when I attempted to explain that I needed time to find a place and save money. They said I'd had time to get ready and should be able to handle things myself. My father gave me a $500 envelope containing what he referred to as startup money, and gave me until the weekend to depart. It happened on a Tuesday. I stuffed my laptop, some clothes, and the about $3,000 I had surreptitiously collected from my freelancing business into my old high school backpack and a few trash bags. As I packed, my sister, who was only 3 years old at the time, watched from the doorway, unable to comprehend what was going on. The initial years were harsh. While being cautious not to overstay my welcome anywhere, I couch-surfed between friends' homes. I worked a variety of jobs, including day labor at construction sites, nighttime shifts at 7-Eleven, and freelance coding whenever I could find customers. In between employment, I would spend the day sleeping at public libraries, utilizing their computers to learn new programming languages and search for better prospects. I survived on whatever was on offer at the dollar store and ramen noodles. I sometimes went to bed hungry because I wasn't sure if I would have enough money for my next meal. The worst time of year was in the winter, when I occasionally had to decide between having enough food to eat and paying for a warm place to sleep. I made an effort to stay in touch with my parents during those formative years in spite of everything. I would periodically give them a call in the hopes of seeing even the slightest indication that they were concerned about my welfare. However, they were obviously waiting for the conversation to end, and each exchange was brief and awkward. They never inquired about my needs or how I was doing. They just remarked, "That's nice," and shifted the conversation to my sister's preschool accomplishments when I told that I was enrolled in community college courses while working. I quit trying after being the only one who reached out for 2 years. Even after I taught myself full-stack coding, they never gave me a call to see how I was doing or left a message on my birthday or on holidays. I recall being so desperate to let them know that I had arrived, but their phone had already been cut off. I learned so much about survival and independence in those first several years after being expelled. I continued to code while working several jobs. I would use my phone to study programming documentation during my breaks at the convenience shop. I would work on minor freelance assignments at the public library in between building site shifts. With free Wi-Fi, air conditioning, and, most importantly, computers where I could practice coding, the library turned into my haven. When a small firm decided to hire me as a junior developer, I finally got my break. My freelance work portfolio and my contributions to open source projects impressed them. Although the pay wasn't high by IT standards, it changed my life. I was able to buy a little studio apartment for the first time and was no longer concerned about where I would sleep every night. I pushed myself into the task, working 70-hour weeks and learning as much as I could about cloud computing, database administration, and system architecture. Like a sponge, I took it all in. After my coworkers saw how committed I was, I quickly took charge of modest initiatives. I kept working on open source projects and creating my own apps on the weekends and at night. I had discovered something I genuinely liked doing, so it wasn't just about the money anymore. When one of the big IT corporations saw my contributions to their open source platform, it was the true turning point. They extended an invitation for an interview, and following 6 rounds of technical interviews, I was offered a job that fundamentally altered my life. After 7 years, I am now in charge of a large project team as a senior software engineer. I have enough cash to feel secure about the future, a modern apartment in a safe building, and a solid investment portfolio. Before my father's number showed up on my phone 3 days ago, after 17 years of total silence, I believed I had finally put an end to my past. It was startling to hear his voice. His voice seemed older, almost frantic. "It couldn't wait," he added. They had to discuss my sister. I was left reeling by the discourse that ensued. "It looks like my 13-year-old sister is having a lot of problems. She frequently skips school, has been caught shoplifting several times, and hangs out with a group of older teens whom my parents disapprove of. More concerningly, she has had multiple encounters with local police authorities and drugs have been discovered in her room twice. 3 different rehabilitation programs have already been tried on her, but none of them appear to have been successful." When my father mentioned their financial predicament, it became evident why they had called. More than $200,000 has been spent on counseling sessions, various treatment programs, and legal bills. They had sold the majority of their valuables, maxed out many credit cards, and remortgaged their home. They are in dire need of assistance and are now considering a $75,000 specialist long-term treatment center. With tears in her eyes, my mother called and said they had nowhere else to go. The phrase, "family needs to stick together," and the fact that I am their only chance to save my sister were repeated by her. I was struck by the irony of hearing these remarks from the same folks who expelled me when I was 18 and never looked back. When I was sleeping in my car in between couch surfing arrangements, where was this sense of family unity? On all those evenings when I went to bed hungry, where was it? In addition to aid with their credit card debt and mortgage payments, they are requesting support with the costs of the treatment program. They require over $100,000 in total. If I couldn't give the entire money right away, my father even recommended that we arrange a payment schedule. To be honest, if I wanted to, I could assist them. I have a secure financial situation thanks to years of frugal living and wise investing. However, I feel physically uncomfortable at the idea of granting them access to my finances. I acquired this money by working hard and making sacrifices for years, frequently going without food and housing while learning to code. I can't sleep at night because of how complicated this scenario is. Since my sister is only a child, I feel bad for even considering helping. She never requested to be born into this mess, and perhaps things would have turned out differently if someone had supported me when I was a teenager. However, I then recall how my parents handled me, how they dismissed me without question and never once inquired about my whereabouts for 17 years. They contacted again yesterday, requesting a face-to-face meeting. They claimed to want to make amends and provide an explanation for everything. They offered to drive the 4 hours to visit me and proposed that we meet at a fancy restaurant in my neighborhood. Their zeal unnerves me in some way, as if they're making an excessive effort to sway events to their advantage. According to my partner, 34F, I should set clear limits. She has personally witnessed the amount of effort I have put into rebuilding my life and getting over my childhood trauma. She fears that allowing my parents to return could reverse years of emotional growth. Although he thinks I owe my parents nothing, my best buddy, who let me sleep on his sofa during those difficult early years, advises me to think about assisting my sister directly if I so choose. I'm totally conflicted right now. My rational side tells me to keep the distance that has helped me succeed. My parents still view me as a resource to be utilized rather than a beloved son, thus they haven't changed. Their true motivations are evident from the way they are handling this matter, concentrating on the money rather than trying to make atonement for the past. However, my emotional side keeps thinking about my sister, a disturbed adolescent who may be misbehaving due to the same poisonous familial dynamics from which I fled. By refusing to assist, am I sustaining the abandoning cycle, or would aiding merely make my parents' manipulation possible? Those terrifying evenings spent sleeping in my car taught me to never take for granted the life I've worked so hard to create. I feel like I'm being pulled back into the craziness that I've been trying to avoid for years. Should I assist them and run the danger of being manipulated again? Do I make an effort to assist my sister directly? Or should I continue to set the boundaries that have helped me recover and grow? I'm sure I'll question any decision I choose. I might be angry with them for dragging me back in if I assist. I could always question whether I could have changed my sister's life if I didn't. This decision is weighing me down, and I could really use some outside insight. First update. I chose to meet my folks at a downtown coffee shop after reading your advice and comments. I reasoned that being in a public setting would help maintain decorum and provide me with a convenient way to leave if necessary. I was immediately struck by how much they had aged when I first saw them enter. In addition to having black circles under their eyes and a lot more gray hair than I could recall, they were worn out. They didn't take long to delve into specifics. It seems that my sister's problems are more serious than they first said over the phone. She has had to attend several rehabilitation programs, all of which they have had to pay for out of pocket, in addition to her substance abuse and legal issues. She hasn't gone to a full week of classes in months, so she's not just missing school periodically. She frequently slips out with individuals who are obviously a bad influence, frequently going missing for days at a time. My parents weren't lying to me about their financial circumstances. They showed me their phone records. To pay for these costs, they have sold the majority of their prized assets, including the house I grew up in. They are currently having financial difficulties and live in a tiny apartment. According to their estimates, they will only be able to survive for a few more months if they sell some family artifacts. I felt uneasy because of this underlying expectation that pervaded our talk. My duty as their son, to assist them, was one of the family obligations they constantly bringing up. They seem to assume that just because we are related, I would step up regardless of what they had done in the past. It was evident from the way they spoke that they hadn't really acknowledged their previous treatment or truly digested how they had wronged me. I could feel all of my previous hatred and rage rising as they continued. None of this was their fault, in their opinion. They dismissed my expulsion at the age of 18, claiming it was just parenting, and that they had acted in the best interests of the family, at the time. They behaved as though their treatment of me was entirely appropriate. They now expected me to overlook everything and intervene to solve their issues. I came to see that they were seeking a solution, not understanding or forgiveness. And my money was that solution to them. I was their final option because they needed someone to shoulder the financial load of all the choices they had made over the years. I listened to what they had to say before firmly telling them that I was unable to assist them. I clarified that when they abandoned me, I had put a lot of effort into starting a life on my own and that I was no longer in a position to help them, either morally or emotionally. I was clear that I didn't feel obligated to get them out of a situation that they had established for themselves. My refusal was not well received by them at all. Their tone altered entirely, and their expressions hardened. They accused me of being callous for not assisting my sister, branded me selfish, and claimed that I was leaving my family. Their eyes were filled with disappointment and rage, which I could see. It reminded me of my early years. Nothing had changed. They continued attempting to use guilt to make me feel as though I owed them money. I was more conflicted as I left that meeting than when I arrived. I feel somewhat relieved that I defended myself and established boundaries. However, another part of me feels bad, as if I'm abandoning them when they're at their lowest. It's difficult to describe, but it seems weird to leave them in this way even if I know they profoundly wounded me. I can't stop thinking about my sister, whom I don't even know, and their predicament. Although I'm sorry for her, I don't think I can help her. It hurts to know that even after all these years, my parents still only regard me as a tool to solve their problems rather than as a unique person with a life and challenges of my own. It's difficult for me to let go of the guilt. Is it wrong of me to persist with my choice? Should I have looked for a compromise? I can't stop reliving the encounter in my head, questioning whether I made the proper decision. Second update. Since my last post, which was only a week ago, things have gotten even more bizarre. Only a few hours earlier, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I heard my sister's voice for the first time when I responded. I was completely unprepared for this. I only have hazy memories of her from when she was a newborn, just before I moved out. The call got off to an unexpectedly good start. Considering what I had heard about her behavior, I was surprised to hear a courteous, almost pleasant voice. She started by requesting that I assist our parents with their present financial predicament. It was evident that she had practiced this pitch because she was making a big deal out of how they were having trouble and how I could save the family. I made an effort to respond politely but firmly, stating that I had to make the best choices for myself because of the complexity of my connection with our parents. Everything changed at that point. Her attitude changed abruptly. In a matter of seconds, she switched from being courteous to becoming enraged, accusing me of being self-centered and leaving her to handle our parents' problems. She had always been envious of her and insisted that I was abandoning my family. She said I was being arrogant since I had left and begun living on my own, whereas they had been my backers the entire time. I was stunned by what she said. They had a hauntingly familiar sound, as if she were repeating something she had heard countless times. She talked about my assistance with such arrogance, as though she really thought I had a duty to intervene and make everything right. I was so shocked that I was unable to react. I was being forced to make up for years of decisions I had nothing to do with by this person I had never dated. She hung up before I had a chance to comprehend her emotional outburst. I tried to make sense of everything as I sat there looking at my phone. What was the source of this animosity? Why did she believe I had left her? I required clarification. I was determined to find out what was happening, so I called my folks. I immediately questioned them whether they had been telling my sister that I had left them and her behind when they first picked up the phone. After a revealing silence, they eventually came clean. They had been giving my sister an entirely distorted explanation for my departure for years. They informed her that they had severed their relationship with her out of spite and that I couldn't bear to share their attention with a younger sibling. I was portrayed as a conceited older brother who left the family because I was envious of her. They had completely removed from their story the fact that they had made me feel alienated from the day she was born and expelled me as soon as I became 18. It was as if someone had taken my breath away. My sister has grown up thinking that I was the bad guy in this tale. Given that she had been fed misinformation about who I was and why I left, it's no wonder she felt as though I had abandoned her. She had been carefully kept in the dark about the fact that my parents had made me feel unwelcome from birth and had evicted me from the house. That realization caused me to hang up on them. Although it has just been a few hours since our previous talk, they haven't made another attempt to get in touch. I'm upset with my parents for misrepresenting me to my sister and giving her the impression that I abandoned her, but I'm also upset with my sister for snapping at me and demanding my assistance as though I owed it to her. It's difficult to get rid of this resentment, but I'm also experiencing a new form of guilt. I wish my parents had been honest with her about my reasons for leaving. Perhaps my relationship with my sister would have been different if they had. Although I might not have been able to provide financial support to my parents, I could have developed a relationship with my sister and perhaps helped her steer clear of some of these behavioral problems. Now, though, it seems impossible to repair the harm. Even whether I want to try is up in the air. My family returned in the worst conceivable way, just when I thought I was done with them forever, which makes the whole scenario tiring. It's not that easy for me, even if a lot of commenters have advised me to simply ban my parents and move on. Whatever you want to call me, this is still family, and I believe that I should at least be aware of what's happening. Even though I'm in no position to provide financial support for my family, I can't help but notice that this is the first time they've contacted me. Nevertheless, I can see that my sister is too engrossed in their version of events to see things any other way, and my parents are still attempting to control the situation to achieve their goals. I'm at a loss on what to do. I can't get rid of the sense that any decision I make will be the wrong one. I'm even more convinced that keeping my distance is the proper decision after the way they've misrepresented the reasons for my departure. I feel bad for my sister though. Her conduct and relationships are obviously being impacted by the skewed perspective of her family history that she was raised with. I wonder if this damage can be fixed or if it's best to leave it alone. Third update. Since my last update, which was a few months ago, I've had plenty of time to think things through and let things calm down. It's been quieter for me, to be honest, but only because I choose to avoid the mess my sister and parents had produced. I'm coming to realize that sometimes taking a step back and avoiding letting their drama take over my life is the greatest way to achieve serenity. My parents gave me another call about a month after I had last provided an update. I wanted to hear what they had to say, so even though I was dreading it, I picked up. They were even more desperate this time, and they accused me of being dishonest in order to get money from me. They described the dreadful situation, how they were in danger of losing everything, and how they wanted me to intervene and make things right. The guilt trip about family is supposed to stick together was their first attempt. When that failed, they resorted to threats, claiming that if I didn't assist them, they would ruin my life. They then claimed that I was their only hope, changing their strategy once more. To be honest, I felt disgusted. They continued to threaten me in spite of everything that had transpired, and they never once stopped to admit how poorly they had treated me. I refused to back down and reiterated that I was unable to provide them with financial support and that I was not responsible for solving their issues. I reminded them that I wasn't responsible for cleaning up the mess. They had made these decisions. Of course, that did not make them pleased. For the next month, they continued to phone, alternating between threats and guilt trips. They eventually stopped phoning. I assumed they had finally come to the conclusion that I would not give in. I didn't hear back from them for a month, and to be honest, I thought that might be it. However, I received another call around a week ago. I nearly didn't answer, but my curiosity won out. Things had only deteriorated. They informed me that they needed to file for bankruptcy. They were essentially starting over with nothing after selling nearly all they owned to pay off their debts. They then revealed even more shocking detail. My sister had moved in with one of her friends and had severed all ties with them. Even though she is just 13, she managed to move in with a friend's family, who my parents claim tolerates her misbehavior. They said it was best that my sister left them because they could no longer see themselves supporting her when I questioned why they didn't call the police. In a sense, they have also abandoned their second child. They initially attempted to place the blame on me. They claimed that none of this would have occurred if I had simply assisted them when they requested it. They said that everything went south because of me. Naturally, they were unable to acknowledge their own responsibility for their acts. I was furious. I bluntly told them that their actions and how they had treated me were to blame for everything that was happening to them. I brought up the topics of how they treated me like a second-class person in my own house, how they neglected me when I needed them, and how they expelled me when I reached 18. I informed them that they continued to try to place the responsibility on me while ignoring the fact that that had an impact on me. At that point, they began to retreat and eventually ceased making excuses. They expressed regret for everything they had done to me and offered an apology. They expressed to me their wish that they had acted differently. They seemed to be saying everything that needed to be said, but it was too late. In addition to the fact that they had ruined my sister's and my own lives, I couldn't simply ignore how they had treated me for years. They were now suffering the repercussions of their decision to push me away. I must admit that I felt sorry for them, but I also realized that I couldn't risk the life I had created for myself in an attempt to mend what was already damaged. I informed them that I needed to keep my distance and that I was unable to assist. Despite their displeasure, I stood by my choice. I was still upset with them for what they had done to me after I hung up. However, I felt sorry for them at the same time. It's too late now, but I wish they had taken the time to realize what they were doing incorrectly when they had the chance. I've come to terms with the fact that I can't save them, and I'm learning to accept that. I have no idea what the future holds for my sister or them. I just know that I won't let their errors disturb my tranquility. They can't drag me back into their mess. I've come too far. I have much more important things to worry about right now, but maybe in the future I'll try to get in touch with my sister once more to see if I can assist her get back on track. All I can do is hope she takes this lesson to heart and makes wiser decisions than our parents did. That's about it for me, then. I won't be checking in on my family for a very long time. Even though I'm aware that this isn't the best conclusion, I've come to terms with it. I sincerely appreciate all of your guidance and encouragement over this trip. It has enabled me to remain steadfast in my choices. My mother-in-law locked me in a bathroom during labor to stop me from stealing the spotlight at her daughter's wedding. I woke up in the hospital later. 2 weeks ago, my husband Richard, Rick M30, and I, F29, welcomed a daughter into the world. We are certainly thrilled to have our first child. Our lives have been extremely hectic as we get used to being parents. We're doing our best, but it's a difficult shift for us both. Due to the events surrounding the birth of our daughter May, we are not really able to get much assistance. I don't think I'll ever be able to forget it because it was one of the most horrific events in my life. I can't get over the crippling fear I experienced that day, not even the joy of May's birth. Without my husband's prompt assistance, I believe I would have passed away. Since May is the family's eldest child, I believe that we should be a little kinder to them despite the terrible incident. But I'm not sure, and all these hormones and infant responsibilities are impairing my judgment. I've gone to Reddit for assistance because of this. Please be patient with me since this narrative may be lengthy and feature many characters. Rick's sisters are Emma and Anna. At 28 and 24, respectively, they are both younger than him. I think there is no hostility between us, and I get along well with both of them. Due to our hectic work schedules and infrequent meetings, we are not particularly close. Emma doesn't even reside in the same city as us, but we still make an effort to stay in touch by calling or texting her occasionally. My mother-in-law, Rachel, F53, is another significant figure in Rick's family and in this narrative. I get along well with Anna and Emma, but Rachel is a very different matter. I don't precisely agree with Rachel. I genuinely believe that she has an issue with everyone, not just myself. She simply never stops being the biggest control freak you can think of. Rachel wants everything to happen the way she wants it to. Since she was the one who reared her children after their father abandoned them, all three of them generally respect her desires. They make an effort to simplify their own lives. She does, however, react if someone tries to desire something different from what she desires. From dissatisfaction and moping to a full-blown meltdown with tears and tantrums, the response might vary widely. I try to avoid her as much as I can since it gets hard to cope with her. Rick is aware of this. He allows me to keep my distance and handle his mother however I see fit because he knows she is problematic. I let it go because, despite her domineering behavior, I can relate to how he feels about her. She doesn't interfere in my life because she doesn't like me, which is good for everyone. But a few days earlier, she was solely to blame for things being out of control. Nobody can ever forgive her, in my opinion. Anna was getting married the day May was born. Her husband Jonah, M30, is actually Rick's friend, and the wedding was beautiful. About a year ago, he asked her to marry him. I had agreed to be a bridesmaid when Anna asked me to. But I knew I couldn't handle that, so when Rick and I learned I was expecting, I had to ask her to ask someone else. There were just 6 months left before the wedding, nearly 6 months after the proposal. I was 3 months pregnant at the time, and I knew I had to put my priorities first. I had anticipated criticism from Anna for abandoning me in the middle. Before I told her, I was twitchy and really anxious. I was relieved and surprised that our connection would not be permanently impaired, as I had expected. When I informed Anna, she was ecstatic. When I told her that I wouldn't be available for tasks, she actually forgot about her wedding for a bit. Her answer was to concentrate on looking after me. In order to avoid me missing the wedding, which I would have if May had been born at that time, she even thought about moving it. For a variety of circumstances, that ultimately didn't occur, and to be honest, she shouldn't have done it in the first place. Even though it ended up being a near call, she remained there for me the entire time. I didn't bother the two sisters much during my pregnancy, which was terrifying for me, because Emma was the maid of honor and I knew they were busy getting ready for the wedding. They both came over, helped me a lot, and kept in touch as much as they could. Although Anna stood by me the entire time, I feel a little bad for not being there for her on the most significant day of her life. My mother-in-law was the only one who seemed a little angry about the whole situation. The wedding preparations were somewhat disrupted, and I believe she was irritated that I could no longer serve as the maid of honor. I could see where she was coming from, and that looked like the only sensible explanation. But even after Anna was comfortable with the pregnancy and my not being the maid of honor, the animosity, for want of a better term, persisted. Even though the bride wasn't angry at all, Rachel somehow began to irritate me after that. It was strange, but I reasoned that perhaps she was nervous due to the wedding, and I was tense due to hormones. I persuaded myself that this was merely fabricating stories in my mind. I did my best to ignore her, and everything was good. During the wedding, everything literally and figuratively went out of control. When it happened 2 weeks ago, I was insanely pregnant. My belly was enormous, my feet were bloated, and I thought I may faint. Nevertheless, Anna wanted me to be at the wedding, so I wanted to go. I wanted it to be her day, so I had asked her whether she wanted me to be there in advance. I informed her that I didn't want the attention to be diverted from her by the appearance of a hugely pregnant woman. The bride and groom should enjoy their wedding days, and I would hate to be the one to ruin that. Anna was genuinely insulted and saddened when I told her this. She stated she couldn't believe I wouldn't go to her wedding and instead fill my mind with this pointless concept. She claimed that all she wanted was for her family to be present to support her on her wedding day and that she didn't care about fame or attention. She urged me not to worry about drama and that I had to come. She meant it, and I knew it. She doesn't hold back when speaking. She would have told me straight out if she didn't want me there. However, she did. And with great vigor. I felt that I had a responsibility to support her. Therefore, I knew I had to be there for her on her wedding day despite my physical discomfort. I'll be honest. I tried my best to ignore the many mumbling voices because I knew Anna was glad I was there. For me, that was all that mattered at the time. Rachel glared at me the entire time and didn't say much to me. However, I was too uneasy to pay attention or notice. I simply left her alone because I lacked the energy to confront her or explain her passive-aggressive actions. I wasn't going to respond to her, so she could glare all she wanted. Then came the major event that deeply stunned and damaged everyone around me, including myself. Just before the ceremony started, I started to feel apprehensive. Since I had previously met Anna, I decided to go upstairs in the hopes of feeling better and would come back afterward. I was unaware that Rachel was following me. I went to the bathroom because I felt strange and sweaty. My water suddenly broke. It was a real flood, and I began to panic because, despite my deepest love for my daughter, she had arrived at the worst possible time. I was unable to think clearly. Fortunately, my mother-in-law was in front of me. I was crouched in agony by then. We had to hurry to the hospital, so I instructed her to grab my phone and call Rick right away as she hurried up to me. I handed her my phone as she helped me up and forced me to sit in the restroom. She lost it at that point. Because she didn't want me to take Anna's attention away from her, she promised to make sure Rick arrived an hour after the ceremony ended. I told her that I couldn't possibly tolerate this for an hour and asked if she was crazy. I attempted to grab my phone from her, but she took it with her and locked me inside. There I was, sitting on a toilet in a restroom, practically on the verge of giving birth, without a spouse or a phone. I'm not sure how I avoided having a full-blown panic attack, but I'm glad I didn't because I'm not sure what might have occurred if I had. I stood up, walked slowly over to the door, and began hammering on it. I kept screaming, but nobody could hear me because the restrooms were on the first floor and everyone was already seated for the wedding. I yelled until I could no longer be heard, but nobody arrived. I honestly thought I was going to die at that point and take my child with me. I had lost my voice, was soaked, sweating profusely, and was fatigued. I don't recall anything else after that. I'm not sure what transpired after I fainted from tiredness. I know I went to the hospital, but I can't even recall how I got there. A few hours later, I woke up in the hospital, sobbing with Rick at my side. It took me a few moments to figure out where I was and what was going on. I thought the worst when I noticed Rick crying. I assumed May didn't make it, and everything came rushing back, including Rachel shutting me in the bathroom and my tears. Rick let out a sigh of relief and began sobbing in my arms as soon as he realized I was awake. I felt sick to my stomach and was unsure of how to interpret it. Then, with a breath of relief, I saw the nurse enter carrying a baby girl. Since Rick was playing me like that, I really wanted to slap him, but he insisted he wasn't. I was unconscious when he found me in the bathroom, so he was just glad I was all right. When I held my kid for the first time, I think I will always remember that moment. There isn't a better feeling in life, in my opinion. There is nothing that can ever compare to how I felt at those times. Since I didn't have the energy to cope with it at that point, I'm glad Rick didn't give me any details. I asked him what was going on because I could hear some noise outside. Rachel wanted to come in and see her granddaughter, he added. I explained everything that had transpired to him. I explained to him what she had done and how she had needlessly put our daughter in risk. I also informed him that I would never again permit her to be close to my daughter. She was dead to me. Rick claimed to be an expert. Rachel sobbed and told him everything when he found me in that way. I informed him that I would not forgive her simply because she had a breakdown. He chuckled and declared that he would file charges for life endangerment and that his mother was dead to him from now on. He promised to take legal action to ensure she was held accountable for her actions. His words made me feel as though a burden had been removed from my shoulders. All three of them adore their mother, and I know he does, but I wasn't in the mood to forgive her after the stunt she pulled that might have killed me and my daughter. Our marriage would have ended if Rick had picked her over me. After that, there would have been no turning back. I secretly hoped that he would pick his mother, who had done a great deal to raise children in spite of everything. I'm not complaining at all, even though I may not have expected him to defend me in that manner. In fact, if it's possible, it has increased my affection for him. He told me the wedding went well when I asked how it went. In order to come see us, Emma and Anna were waiting for him to call. He laughed when I inquired if Anna was upset, telling me that I didn't need to be concerned about her at all. She has been beaming with happiness and pride, saying that May's birth was the greatest gift she could have had and that her entire family attended the wedding. When he told me that, I was crying and begged him to call them right away. Jonah, Emma, and Anna joined me at the hospital in a matter of minutes. The greatest part was that Jonah and Anna were still dressed for their wedding, And Anna declared that she couldn't resist the opportunity to snap a wedding photo with her niece. It was such a touching moment that I burst into tears. I apologized to Anna for spoiling her day after the photo. She gave me a hug and told me that I was seeing things incorrectly because I had brightened her day. The only thing I did wrong, according to Anna, was not alerting them sooner. I informed her about my mother-in-law's actions ever since we announced the pregnancy. They could have stopped her drama, she thought. When I told Anna that I didn't want to start any problems, Emma added that as long as I was safe, any mischief was okay. When I realized they loved me like family, I started crying even as I typed this. To them, I was more than simply Rick's wife, I was family. One of the greatest women I've ever met is Anna. It's no surprise that she is where she is now because she is so content and safe. How Rachel is so different from her kids is beyond me. They seem to have recognized that she wasn't what they wanted to be after seeing her. Anna had told Rachel on her way in that she would see to it that Rick and I filed charges, but apparently Rachel was still outside. I didn't want Emil close to me, but she wanted to come in and meet May. We must protect ourselves from her, Anna remarked. She felt she hadn't addressed her mother's overprotective tendencies or made it apparent that she didn't mind my pregnancy, so she apologized to me. Perhaps the situation could have been prevented if she had, she claimed. I assured her that she was not at fault because she had given me a sense of security. Rick was outside conversing with Mil the entire time. 2 to 3 days after my discharge, Rick informed me what he and Mil had discussed when I returned home with May. He said that nothing would alter his decision to bring charges, which he had already told her he would do. He also informed her that she would never be permitted to be in May's life. In every way, she was not her grandma. Rick clarified that she had decided to endanger both our unborn child's and my lives over a perceived offense that didn't even bother her. Additionally, he informed her that the entire amount of money she had been relying on from Rick and Emma would be drastically cut. She broke down in tears and claimed she didn't deserve this as she had dedicated her entire life to raising her children. Rick informed her that although he was grateful for everything she had done for them, it did not provide her authority over their life. He said that she was at fault and that he had been putting up with or overlooking everything she did for years, but that he was done. She had gone too far and demonstrated that she was unsafe to be around when it came to May and me. Her reasoning didn't hold water, especially since Anna and I never had an issue together. As a mother, Rachel acknowledged that Anna hadn't intended for me to take center stage. When Anna heard this, she attacked her. We are definitely moving on with the case, but Rick will take care of it because I can't handle this turmoil and I have a newborn to look after. I'll take care of it, Rick responded. The siblings no longer want to speak with her. Rick and I clearly don't communicate with her, Emma only speaks to her when it's absolutely necessary, and Anna has shut her off completely. Mil probably didn't expect this. Despite how twisted that seems, it's possible that she truly believed she was protecting Anna. Even though I have no intention of defending her, I still feel sorry for her because everything went so wrong. It feels wrong and bad to me now, and I'm wondering if they should speak it out with her. Maybe I'm not thinking clearly, but I'm not sure. I'm certain that Rick will lose it if I bring this up to him. He can't even look at her at the moment since he is so mad with her. This isn't what I expected, yet here we are. Update. Reconciliation is permanently out of the question. I realize I haven't posted in a while, but I've been busy taking care of myself and my child as a new mother. Fortunately, May will be 8 weeks old in a few days, and we are all quite happy about it. Jonah and Anna have been tremendously helpful to Rick and myself. Emma calls nearly every day, but she had to return to work. Everyone's eyes are actually brightened by May. They swoon over her, and her photos are all over the group chat. Mil has not been contacted. I persuaded Rick that filing charges would be pointless because we already had too much on our plate. Since neither of us had the energy for anything else, Rick reluctantly consented. Last week, Emil seemed appreciative when we told her. I use the word appeared, since last week the woman, who is truly insane, revealed her actual nature to everyone. Rick and I awoke to a loud knock on the door at around 1 in the morning. Rick went to open the door, but I fled and hid with May because I assumed it was a robbery. I heard shouting, but I was afraid to venture out for fear of waking May. As it happened, it was Mil. According to Rick, she was acting irrationally, yelling that we couldn't keep her away and that she needed to see May. Before she left, Rick had to threaten her with the cops. She was attempting to break in. Since everyone needed to know if something was wrong with her, we informed Anna and Emma right away. She texted us unsettlingly the following day. She began by claiming that we were punishing her because her sole transgression was becoming a mother and that we were being cruel and horrible to her by denying her access to May. Her text eventually became more disorganized, but there was still more melodramatic rubbish in it. She claimed that parenting 3 children was a burden and that she was constantly balancing the needs of one child over those of the others. She said that because she didn't want May to ruin Anna's birthday, she felt compelled to do that on May's birthday. Conveniently, she failed to remember that May was actually a fetus, and Anna had repeatedly stated that she had no problem with the pregnancy and wedding taking place simultaneously. This part made sense to me, but what she said next startled me. She acknowledged that she was concerned she wouldn't be as significant to her children now that May was in our life. She assumed Anna would be upset when I told her I was pregnant, since that's how a normal woman would feel. She didn't like it though, when she realized that we were all thrilled about the wedding and the pregnancy. In essence, she expressed her disapproval of the fact that we were all content with one another and with each other. She wanted us to be competitive and envious. She admitted that she hoped Anna would be upset with us when she realized the due date would be close to the wedding, so that May wouldn't steal the show. However, that did not occur. May was the only topic of conversation. She claimed that the fact that an unborn child had replaced her as the siblings' unifying element made her feel degraded. She kept sending texts like this, and when I requested Rick to block her, she was still typing. I informed him that she was dangerous for May and us all since she was insane. Since seeing those messages, I've been suffering from a persistent headache. It's unbelievable that a woman in her 50s is competing against a 7-week-old child. I'm done with her, therefore it doesn't make sense to me and doesn't have to. I'm done defending her actions and attempting to figure out why she did them. I don't care if she ends up in hell. Anna and Emma were also distressed when we forwarded the messages to them. They believe she may be experiencing a manic episode. Emma promised to fly down and get Mil examined in a facility. Although I think it's an excellent idea, I will not be getting involved. I no longer want to interact with her because of her insane behavior. Second update. A restraining order has been issued against Mil. We're exercising caution, but she hasn't tried anything else. Emma consulted with a doctor and a psychologist and had her tested. Physically, everything is good with Mil. Her diagnosis was limited to generalized anxiety disorder. The doctors advised Emma to take her to treatment, stating that there was no underlying medical cause for her behavior. Since then, Emma has not gotten in touch. She stated that she was ready to assist if something went wrong, but she can no longer put up with Mil's hatred. I completely understand and agree with that. If she had a mental illness, I might have sympathized with her and supported her, but now that it has been ruled out, we can be certain that this is who she is. With such, there is no reconciliation. We received the restraining order for this reason. Her safety is the top priority for Rick, May, and myself, and Mil has shown herself to be unsafe twice. Furthermore, she harbors animosity for May in particular, so we need to be even more cautious that they avoid each other. I hope I never have anything else to say about this entire experience, and I believe this will be my final update. The family has been through a lot, and I'm simply thankful that we're all safe. Am I the asshole for refusing to give my $75,000 restaurant savings to my sister's Ivy League dreams and getting kicked out? To open my own tiny restaurant, I, a 25-year-old, had been saving for years. My dream has always been to start my own restaurant and work as a chef. I worked toward this objective with every cent I made from both full-time and part-time jobs after graduation. I saved $75,000 after working hard and living frugally for 7 years. Although they were aware of my dream, my parents dismissed it as a passing fad. In order to save money on rent, I moved in with them, which accelerated my goal-achieving process. I should have moved out sooner, looking back. The golden child is my younger sister, who is 19F. She is my parents' clear favorite and is excellent at everything. They never failed to make comparisons between us, elevating her while ignoring me. My sister was accepted to an Ivy League university last month to pursue a master's degree. Although my parents were overjoyed, the living expenses and tuition significantly outstripped their expectations. They convened a family meeting one evening. I assumed it was to talk about my sister's acceptance, but instead they wanted me to donate all of the money I made from my business to her schooling. I was taken aback. As though anticipating this, my sister sat there smugly. My parents were waiting for me to agree as they gave me an eager gaze. When I was hesitant, my mother started stressing the value of education and the fact that this was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Family comes first, according to my dad, and I should encourage her to pursue her goals. It was unbelievable to me. What about the years I'd spent working hard and my dreams? I explained how much the money meant to me and how close I was to reaching my goal when I informed them I couldn't. Their attitude changed instantly. My mother broke down in tears and accused me of being self-centered. When my dad raged that I was betraying the family and that he had always been envious of my sister's success, his face flushed crimson with rage. My sister didn't state that she didn't want my money or even defend me. She obviously felt entitled to it. The dispute swiftly got out of hand. I was guilt-tripped by my parents, who said that allowing me to live rent-free was a great favor because they had given up everything for us. Conveniently, they disregarded the housework and upkeep I had performed while I was residing there. I remained steadfast, declaring that although I loved my sister and wanted her to succeed, I couldn't let go of my own goals. Like other students, I advised her to take out student loans or postpone for a year in order to save money. Outrage erupted in response to this suggestion. For even implying that my sister should have to struggle or postpone her education, my mother accused me of being callous. According to my father, I should be the older brother and take care of my sister because taking out loans was too risky. The dispute continued for hours. It always got worse when I believed it couldn't. Every error I had ever committed and every flaw my parents saw in me was brought up. They often made negative comparisons between me and my sister. It felt like long-suppressed animosity was being let go. At last, my father threatened to throw me out of the house if I didn't give my sister the money. He offered me a day to choose between packing my things and turning over my funds. I was taken aback. It was unbelievable to me that they would progress thus far. A larger part of me understood that if I gave in now, I would be bitter against them for the rest of my life, but a smaller part of me wanted to give in to maintain harmony and avoid losing my family. Along with my money, I would also have to give up my goals and my sense of self-worth. That night, I tossed and turned, considering my possibilities. I had made up my mind by dawn. I got to work packing. My parents looked surprised when they saw me. I suppose they genuinely thought I would comply with their requests. My mom tried one more time to get me to change my decision while I was packing my car. She warned me that I would always regret this and that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. My dad's expression was a mask of despair and rage as he stared from the window. At last, my sister spoke up, but not to support me. She accused me of being self-centered and claimed that she was always aware of my lack of concern for her. I did care for her in spite of everything, but I couldn't burn myself alive to keep her warm, so her comments hurt more than my parents. I had a range of feelings as I drove away from the house where I grew up, including fear, sadness, and rage, but I also felt relieved. I had the impression that a burden had been removed. I had defended myself against my family's irrational expectations for the first time in my life. The initial days were difficult. While I searched for an apartment, I stayed with a friend. My folks bombarded my phone with messages that alternated between violent outbursts and guilt trips. For my own peace of mind, I banned their phone numbers. When word spread around the extended family, opinions diverged. Some family members backed me up, claiming my parents were being irrational. Others accused me of being ungrateful and self-centered, siding with my parents. It was a complete disaster. I put myself into my restaurant plans after finding a tiny place. It was thrilling and challenging, especially without the network of support I believed I had. I had complete power over my life and my choices for the first time. Months passed. According to rumors, my sister had chosen to postpone entrance for a year in order to work and accumulate savings. I was unhappy that it had come to this, but I also felt somewhat justified. A few times, my parents tried to get back together, but only if I continued to pay my sister the money. I remained steadfast in my choice. Our relationship was still tense and aloof. 6 months later, I'm almost done negotiating a lease for a tiny restaurant location. It's a beginning, but not much. I am reminded that I made the proper decision with each step I take toward realizing my ambition. However, doubts do arise. As the day's thrill wanes late at night, I question whether I made the correct decision. Was I being self-centered, really? Was it right of me to give up something for my sister? Was my decision to shut off communication with my family an overreaction? I am aware of my parents' poisonous and deceptive actions. My sister was acting entitled, and I know it. Despite everything, I still miss them since they are my family. I can't help but question whether there was a more effective approach to deal with the circumstance. Reddit, did I make a mistake by refusing to part with my savings? Was it right of me to maintain my ground and follow my aspirations even if it meant sacrificing my ties with my family, or should I have found a medium ground? Edit 1. This really took off overnight. I appreciate all of your feedback and encouragement. I'll attempt to answer some frequently asked questions and offer some background. My sister has always been given preference by my parents, but it has never been this obvious. In retrospect, I can see that they consistently expected me to make minor sacrifices for her. Our parents' money plus a scholarship my sister received helped to cover the cost of her undergraduate studies. They didn't have enough saved because this master's program was unexpected. Some inquired about my sister's employment opportunities. Although her field of study has significant career potential, this is not a given. It appears that my parents believe this degree will help her in the future. Cultural expectations were brought up in a few remarks. Although not to this extent, it is typical in our culture for elder siblings to assist younger ones. My parents went too far, according to the majority of my cousins. If you're wondering why I didn't move out sooner, the answer is that I was attempting to save money, and living with parents till marriage is common in our culture. I now see how much power this gave my parents over me. Some said that in order to maintain harmony, I ought to have made a lower offer. My parents made it clear that it was all or nothing. They wanted the entire $75,000, but I gave it some thought. For those who are interested in the restaurant, it will be a small establishment that specializes in fusion cuisine, which blends flavors from the area with aspects of our cultural heritage. It's thrilling but frightening. Many people want to know if I keep in touch with my sister. I've made several attempts to contact her, but she either ignores me or replies with brief, uninteresting texts. I believe she accuses me of sabotaging her scheme. On the remarks on my parents' financial status, they are not having financial difficulties. They live comfortably and work well. They simply didn't want to take money out of their own retirement or savings accounts. Family therapy was recommended by some. I believe we all need space right now, but I'm open to it in the future. My parents have yet to admit that their desire was irrational. Again, I want to thank everyone for their support and insights. Hearing your viewpoints and sharing this tale has been healing. I'll keep you informed on the restaurant's progress. Edit 2. Since there is still interest in this post, here is another update. I've given the remarks that I should attempt to patch things up with my sister apart from my parents a lot of thought. Yes, she is young and may yet be influenced by them. I made the decision to get in touch with her once more, this time sending a longer email outlining my position. I was surprised when she answered. She wrote a confused and angry email. She acknowledged that she was conflicted about how our parents were handling it and wanted the chance I was denying her. She did, however, agree to meet next week to discuss the matter face to face. Regarding the restaurant, everything are moving along nicely. I completed the lease and got the improvements underway. Although it requires a lot of work, my confidence in my choice grows every day. A number of my friends have volunteered, and I am so grateful for their support. Since my last update, my parents have not gotten in touch. According to a cousin, they are informing relatives that I have left them. Even though it hurts, I'm making an effort to concentrate on the good things in my life at the moment. Some of you recommended that I write my parents a thorough letter outlining my thoughts and feelings. After the restaurant opens, I believe I'll do that. I need to put all of my attention into realizing this dream right now. Again, I want to thank you all for your help and guidance. It has been immensely beneficial throughout this challenging period. Update. I wanted to discuss what has transpired since my last post, which was nearly a year ago. Everything has changed, and I'm still getting used to it. The first piece of good news is that my restaurant is now open. It has now been open for around 4 months. It's tiny, like I always intended, and has a welcoming ambiance with a cuisine that blends regional flavors with traditional foods from our culture. Although the initial weeks were quite hectic, things have begun to settle down. Although we haven't made a lot of money yet, we are breaking even and gaining a devoted clientele. I've even been able to hire a dishwasher, a part-time server, and 2 line cooks. Every minute feels worthwhile, even though I've been working non-stop, often 14-hour days. I'm living out my dream right now. My friends and my few remaining family members' support has been crucial. Now for the unexpected turn of events. I heard the bell over the door ring yesterday while I was getting ready for the dinner service. After I announced that we weren't yet open, I heard a voice I recognized say, "I'm not here as a customer." My sister was the one. She appeared more worn out and less put together than I had recalled. We simply stared at one another for a while, unsure of what to say. The stillness was finally broken by her. She said, "I need a job," in a timid and low voice. "I was wondering if you had any openings." I was taken aback. The last thing I anticipated was this. For the first time in months, we had a conversation when I encouraged her to sit down. As it happened, her life had not gone as planned. Finding a job in her profession proved more difficult than she had expected, especially without the master's degree she had been banking on. She had postponed her enrollment to the Ivy League institution, hoping to work for a year and save money. She informed me that our parents were still upset with me. They accused me of sabotaging her opportunity to receive a prestigious degree. To pay for her education, they had been pressuring her to acquire a well-paying job, but she was starting to feel the effects of the strain. Unable to cope with their continual disappointment, she had left their home a month ago. I could see how much she had changed as she spoke. The haughtiness had vanished, and in its place came a humility I had never witnessed in her. She expressed regret for not defending me that day and acknowledged that she had been mistaken to feel entitled to my money. To be honest, I was a little depressed. We were sad about the time we had lost. I was saddened by the way our family had disintegrated. I promised to give the job some thought and get back to her. I'm conflicted now. On the one hand, her previous behavior still hurts me, and I'm concerned that hiring her could cause new issues or reopen old ones. However, she is requesting assistance, and she is my sister. For the hectic weekend shifts, I could also use an additional server. I have not yet made up my mind. I can't help but think what my parents would say if they found out she had turned to me for support. I question whether this is an opportunity to begin mending our relationship or if it's a recipe for catastrophe. So, Reddit, I'm in need of your counsel once more. Do I need to hire my sister? After everything that has transpired, is it prudent to combine family and business? Should I advise her to search elsewhere instead? I never imagined myself in this situation, deciding on my sister's destiny. I suppose life has a way of taking you by surprise. Any opinions or suggestions would be greatly valued. Last update. A few weeks have passed since my last post, and I've come to a decision I never would have imagined. I've made the decision to assist in paying for my sister's schooling after giving it some serious thought and having several lengthy discussions with her. I understand that considering all that has transpired thus far, this may come as a surprise, but listen to me. We began communicating more frequently after my sister arrived and asked for a job. I knew it would be very difficult to combine family and business at this time, so I didn't hire her at the restaurant. However, I saw from our chats how much she had developed and evolved over the previous 12 months. She acknowledged that she had been entitled and self-centered during the family argument and expressed regret for her actions. She informed me that the previous year had served as a wake-up call for her. Her struggle to make ends meet while working minimum wage jobs had changed her outlook on the importance of hard effort and money. Her statement that she now realized why my restaurant idea meant so much to me was what truly got to me. She had never before respected the amount of labor I had put into making it a reality. I also discovered that our parents continued to put pressure on her to pay for her education, making her feel inadequate for not being able to do it on her own. It brought back memories of the years I spent feeling below their standards. I gave it a lot of thinking before deciding. I assured her that I would cover half of her next year's tuition. Although it's not the entire sum my parents had previously requested, it's still a sizable donation that would enable her to begin her master's program without being deeply indebted. What made me choose to do this? I didn't do it because I felt guilty or obligated to. It's because I witnessed my sister's real transformation. I noticed someone who was making an effort to improve herself after learning some difficult lessons. In the end, I came to the realization that I did want to assist her, if I could, not at the expense of my own goals, but in a way that seemed right to me. I can now afford this without putting my restaurant's operations at risk because it is doing well enough. Being able to assist on my own terms is a pleasant feeling. When I told my sister, she became quite emotional. She sobbed and gave me a hug, saying she would work part-time to pay for her living expenses and that she would reimburse me eventually. I advised her to take full advantage of this chance as the greatest way to repay me. Our parents haven't been informed yet. Although I have no idea how they will respond, I am certain that my choice will remain the same regardless of the outcome. My sister and I are the only ones involved. I'm content with this decision. It feels right, even if it's not what I expected. Life occasionally offers you the opportunity to change how your narrative ends. I own this. Grandma's inheritance changed everything after my parents kicked me out and preferred my sister because of a missing bracelet. My sister was always given preference by my parents, who once expelled me for having a lost bracelet. They therefore arrived at my house in tears years later when my grandmother delivered me the family's inheritance in lieu of her. I grew up in a modest suburban home with 2 parents and a younger sister, which is what most people would consider a standard middle-class family. We appeared to be a picture-perfect family to outsiders. However, anyone who knew us well would tell you that my parents and I were constantly at odds. The explanation was straightforward. I was usually the last thing on their mind, and they loved my younger sister Emma. However, it wasn't always that way. I recall how devoted and kind my parents were to Emma and me when we were young. They lavished us with love, and for good reason. We were a rather intelligent couple who were excellent at everything. Nothing seemed to separate us during the golden age we shared. Both of us participated in gymnastics, art classes, and piano lessons, and our parents were equally pleased with us. There was no little favor for one of us over the other, and I never experienced any tension. But when I started 6th grade, everything changed. There was only one test at first. I received a poor grade, the first in my life, even though it wasn't a very significant one. It was sufficient for my parents to start viewing me in a different light. It was obvious to me that something had changed. When Emma brought home another flawless score, my mother wouldn't give me the same look that she gave Emma. While Emma's accomplishments were greeted with sincere pride, the praise they used to give me began to feel forced. All of a sudden, Emma was the one who could do no wrong and I was the loose thread that could unravel at any time. I initially believed it to be a passing phase. Perhaps I was being overly sensitive. However, it was impossible to ignore. I was held accountable for any mistakes I made, no matter how minor. Emma's mistakes were dismissed or, worse, forgiven. "She's just having an off day," my dad used to say. "Why can't you be more like Emma?" was my constant question. I was plagued with the statement during my adolescence. Emma became the daughter my parents had always desired as we grew older. She was gregarious, intelligent, and well-liked. She was the popular girl, the homecoming queen, and the class president. Conversely, my introversion increased. I studied hard, remained to myself, and succeeded in my own unique way. However, it was never sufficient to rival Emma. I eventually gave up trying. The disparities in our treatment had become starkly apparent by the time we were in high school. Emma always had her own car, brand new clothes, and all the attention. Our parents would spend hours sitting with her when she needed homework help, making sure she grasped every step. If I sought assistance, they would either dismiss me and instruct me to solve the problem on my own, or it would be too late in the evening. They had begun to treat Emma like a princess and treat me like an adult. Emma had everything given to her, but I quickly realized that if I wanted something, I would have to work for it. I made an effort to keep up my relationship with Emma in spite of the unequal treatment. She was my sister, after all, and I cherished her. However, it becomes increasingly difficult to overlook her increasing entitlement. Knowing she could get away with anything, she appeared to enjoy the attention. Emma was loved by more people than just my parents. Her allure enthralled our friends, instructors, and even complete strangers. I was the background darkness, and she was the shining girl. I started to question whether others truly viewed me for who I was or if I was merely Emma's sister. The pivotal moment occurred one summer following my high school graduation. I was eager to leave the house and start over after receiving a partial scholarship to a respectable college. I believed that my parents and I may get along better with some space and that they would eventually miss me when I was gone. I was mistaken. At this point, Emma began dating Jake, our high school football team's standout quarterback. He was well-liked, attractive, and from a rich family. Naturally, my folks adored him. They regarded him as though he were their son. My parents would prepare extravagant dinners to impress Jake, who spent every weekend at our place. They were obviously already looking forward to the day when Emma and Jake would tie the knot, start a family, and have the ideal grandchildren. I was working part-time to help pay for the expenses my scholarship didn't cover while I was having trouble getting through my first semester of college. Emma and Jake's most recent excursions or Emma's academic performance were the only topics I heard when I returned home after breaks, fatigued. Nobody inquired about me or my situation. They would also say sarcastic things like, "Why can't you find someone like Jake?" What remained of our family dynamic was devastated by the charges that followed. I came home for a visit one weekend when I was off from college. Before Emma's new bracelet, a gold charm bracelet that Jake had given her, vanished, everything appeared to be as usual. Emma was upset, and it was a costly item. In a state of complete panic, my parents tore the house apart in an attempt to find it. Emma speculated that perhaps I had taken it when they were unable to locate it. I initially believed her to be kidding, but she wasn't. The previous evening, she claimed to have witnessed me ogling the bracelet and hinted that I might have removed it out of envy. I was enraged. Her bracelet was untouchable by me. I hadn't given it a second consideration. My parents, however, believed her without hesitation. Of course, I objected. My folks wouldn't listen, even though I vowed I hadn't taken anything. They thought I had stolen it to get even. In fact, my father once remarked, "We always knew you were jealous of Emma." That was the most painful thing they had ever uttered. It seemed as though the years spent striving to be a good daughter and gain their approval had been in vain. They threatened to leave the house unless I returned the jewelry. What I was hearing was unbelievable. They didn't believe me even though I had my word and no evidence of my innocence. Their decisions had already been made, so I went out. I didn't turn around after packing my things and leaving the house. I severed all contact with them. I had no other option. I couldn't continue to live in a home where I was treated like a criminal for no fault of my own. To help me get back on my feet, I found a friend to stay with. I didn't talk to my parents again for years after that. Without the help of my family, I struggled in the ensuing years. I was left to do it all by myself. I struggled to make ends meet while balancing employment and education. On some days, I didn't think I would make it, but I did. After graduating, I secured a respectable career and gradually began to establish a life for myself. Emma was doing well in the meantime, according to mutual friends. She had secured a lucrative position at a marketing company, and she and Jake remained together. She had gotten into it with my father's help. For them, nothing appeared to have changed. Without me, they were still the ideal family. I didn't hear from my family for 5 years. My life had to be rebuilt from the ground up. My grandmother, my dad's mother, specifically, was the only one who provided me with any kind of assistance or spiritual support. I was unexpectedly invited to my grandmother's Christmas dinner. To put it mildly, I was taken aback. The only member of the family who had ever treated me fairly was my grandma. She never mentioned my parents or made an effort to get me to make amends with them, but she did occasionally send me a birthday card or text to check in after everything that had transpired. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go when I received the invitation, but I had a gut feeling that I should. It was like entering a time capsule when I got to the supper. Along with a few other family members, my parents, Emma, and even Jake were present. There was a noticeable tension. Emma pretended that nothing had ever happened between us, and my parents gave me a harsh welcome. They seemed to be expecting me to put the past behind me and comply with their ideal family act. I made it through the terrible night. My grandmother then began distributing gifts toward the end of the evening. I didn't have any big expectations, but my heart almost stopped as I opened the box. A gold locket, an ancient family relic that had been handed down through the years, was found within the box. The jewelry wasn't just any jewelry. This locket was thought to be the legitimate heir to the family's possessions. Grandma was giving it to me directly, ignoring her son, my father, and all the other grandchildren, including Emma, who had inherited it from her father. It represented more than merely custom. It implied that everything my grandparents had, including their home, land, and savings, would eventually belong to me. When my parents realized what had happened, I could see their faces become white. In stunned quiet, Emma, who had always been the golden kid, sat. I could sense the tension in the room as my parents rapidly changed their tone, trying to mask their amazement with fake grins. My parents quickly drew me aside after the awkward remainder of the meal. All of a sudden, they were remorseful, as though a few words of kindness could erase years of unfair treatment and neglect. They mentioned Emma's impending marriage and their desire for me to rejoin the family, for her benefit. However, I was aware. This was about money, not about love or family. Our family had always valued the heirloom, and they knew that I would be the one to inherit everything that went along with it now that I had it. They cared for me, thus they weren't worried about mending the relationship. They were concerned about their potential losses. In a tone that seemed more like a warning than an offer, my father even stated that they were prepared to forgive me for everything and begin anew. They seemed to have forgotten who had initially harmed them. Other family members also added their voices, advising me to exercise common sense. They insisted that regardless of what had previously transpired, family is everything, and that I should get back in touch with them. I could already hear the cliches piling up. You don't want to be alone, sharing is caring, and blood is thicker than water. I was overanalyzing the matter because of all this pressure, even though it was obvious what I should and shouldn't do. Knowing that they only appreciated me for what I now had, did I wish to rejoin this family? Given that their newfound interest in me was motivated by self-interest, could I forgive them? What recommendations do you have regarding this? If so, I'd be in dire need of some. First update. I felt overburdened when I returned to my flat following the Christmas celebration. It was difficult to take in all that had transpired. For the remainder of the evening, I made every effort to stay away from my parents and other family members, but they persisted in trying to come near to me. Emma would not quit grinning at me as though we were suddenly best friends, and my parents would not stop glancing at me with guilt. However, I was aware that their goals were more about the family riches connected to the artifact I had been given than they were about family. Their actions simply made me want to keep my distance. The days that followed were devoted to introspection. I understood that I needed to talk to Grandma in a suitable manner. The locket had useful applications in addition to its symbolic significance. It meant that I would get the family's possessions. Although I hadn't been searching for this, I needed clarification now that it was on my plate. I wasn't prepared to become entangled in family money and tradition without fully comprehending its significance. I was still anxious about bringing up the topic when I saw my grandmother. I asked her honestly what it all meant after thanking her for entrusting me with the relic. I wanted to be open and honest. I informed her that if it meant bringing me back into the instability I had fought so hard to avoid, I didn't want the family's riches. Although they weren't my top concern, I promised her that I would use the assets sensibly if they came my way. Grandma patiently listened. Then she explained something to me that I didn't fully comprehend previously. She had spent years observing all of this. She had witnessed the family's growing estrangement from her, particularly following the argument between my parents and myself. She clarified that she was aware of the dysfunctional family dynamics and the harsh treatment I had received, especially from Emma and my parents. She was even aware of the fact that Emma was always given a free pass while I had to work several jobs to make ends meet during my time in college. Grandma acknowledged that she hadn't gotten involved for so long because she thought individuals should be allowed to live their own lives. However, she realized that her assets needed to be transferred to the appropriate person after witnessing how things had turned out, how I had been mistreated but had still managed to create something for myself. Someone who wouldn't waste it or take it for granted. She picked me because of this. My name was on her will, which she had already made. Her honesty astonished me. The heirloom was no longer the only consideration. Trust was at issue. Grandma trusted me to take care of everything, and that duty felt significant and weighty. She reassured me that this was about entrusting the family's future to people she knew would uphold it, not about compensating me for what I had endured. Even though it seemed odd to find myself in this situation all of a sudden, I couldn't help but feel validated. Grandma had seen the truth, and it meant more than anything else, therefore all those years of being the forgotten daughter suddenly didn't matter. But although this made a lot of things clearer, it also made things more complicated. The inheritance remained a threat, and I was certain that my parents and Emma would do all in their power to regain control now that they were aware of the consequences. They had no intention of letting it go lightly. Second update. Hi everyone on Reddit. When I return with an update, the situation has gotten worse. If you have been following along, you are aware of how chaotic my family situation is. I was mistaken to believe that returning to school would bring me any calm. I went back to my flat in the hopes of escaping the drama following the Christmas debacle, in which Emma and my parents essentially begged for the family inheritance. I tried to ignore my family's incessant calls and texts by immersing myself in my work for a few days. Naturally, though, such tranquility was short-lived. Not only did Emma and my parents keep sending texts, but so did the rest of my family. Suddenly, relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years felt obligated to settle the conflict. They were all repeating the same phrases. Don't let money tear you apart. Family is everything, and, my personal favorite, you're being selfish. The fact that these relatives were unaware of the entire scenario only made matters worse. While Emma had it all and lived the ideal life, they were not around when my parents disowned me or when I had to scrounge for food and rent while attending college. They only cared about what they had heard from my parents, who were now neatly playing the victims, and didn't give a damn about the years of abuse. Their opinions suffocated me. Before things took a startling turn, I believed I could just ignore everything and concentrate on my work. Emma and my dad unexpectedly came up to my apartment one afternoon. You read correctly, they showed up at my house without my invitation. They seemed to have a purpose, which was to coerce me into making amends or something, of course on their terms. I could hear my mother sobbing from the hallway as they pounded on the door and called my name. I went cold. After several months of being with me, my friend appeared frightened, and I was at a loss for what to do. My parents began begging me in front of my pal as soon as I opened the door. My mother was crying as she talked about how they couldn't let me go and how we had to make things right. As though I had done something wrong, my dad said that they were willing to forgive me for everything. Emma, meanwhile, was standing there pretending to be worried, but I could see straight through her. She was more concerned about what would happen if I didn't agree to split the inheritance than she was about making amends. They weren't listening to me when I tried to keep the topic quiet and told them that this wasn't the right time or place for it. While my dad stayed in the doorway, refusing to leave, my mom virtually shoved past me in an attempt to enter the apartment. They kept interrupting me to talk about Emma's impending marriage and the necessity to restore the family's unity before that could happen. They tried to coerce me into agreeing to give up a portion of the future inheritance, which, mind you, I didn't even formally receive yet, by making it seem like I was the one destroying the family. It was a humiliating scene. My neighbors began to emerge from their rooms to observe the mayhem. I was doing everything I could to keep it quiet, but the more they lingered, the louder they became. Emma stood there looking smug, as though she knew they would finally wear me down, while my mom was on her knees pleading with me to forgive them. I was stuck and didn't know what to do. They refused to budge when I told them to go. After what seemed like hours of begging, I finally had enough and phoned security. Fortunately, security showed up right away. At first, they asked my parents to leave in a courteous manner, but they refused. Security had to step in at that point and threaten to call the police if they didn't leave. It was a whole new level of embarrassment. Before my parents ultimately gave in, my mother made a huge public announcement that I was leaving my home. Emma went one step farther, as if that wasn't enough. She informed a number of my friends via mass text after she left that I had deserted her and my parents. She cleverly omitted the part where they had disowned me for something I didn't even do, making it seem like I was the bad guy in this whole situation. I had to explain the entire thing to some of my friends because they were understandably perplexed. It was draining, and I was astounded by the extent Emma would go to in order to appear to be the victim. I'm not sure what to do right now. I'm attempting to move on and haven't spoken to my parents since that happened, but I can't help but watch over them because of their desperation. I feel like I'm being forced into a difficult situation where I have to give in order to please everyone else. However, I will never forget the way they treated me. However, the pressure is too much to handle. A part of me questions whether this will ever end or if I will have to live with it forever. It seems like my family is desperate to pull me back into their mess, even though right now I simply want to concentrate on me and my future. Third update, greetings once more Reddit users. Hold on tight, for after my last report, things have become considerably worse. To be honest, though, I wasn't sure I wanted anything to do with them anymore after everything. I couldn't help but wonder, what's keeping them from turning on me again if it was so simple to do so based only on a story? What assurance did I have that my parents wouldn't act in the same way if a new circumstance arose, given their ability to change their minds so swiftly in the past, supporting Emma and rejecting me? I felt as though I would have to be cautious around them all the time, wondering if their devotion to me was sincere or merely practical. I would want to put myself first and take a vacation from them all for the time being. Don't bring me back into their mess, let them handle it on their own. My parents also contacted me again after all of this, but they spoke in a different tone. They stopped pressuring me and making me feel guilty. They nearly apologized, but I could see they weren't sincere. In order to obtain the future inheritance, they were still concentrating on the money and trying to make things go as smoothly as possible. They were more concerned with maintaining appearances and ensuring financial stability than they were with actually repairing our relationship, particularly now that Emma's future wasn't looking as stable as they had planned. To be honest, I haven't replied to them and I'm not sure I will. Even if they come with an apology, I'm not prepared to open that door again because this entire event has served as a brutal reminder of how toxic my family can be. I'm concentrating on myself and the future I want to create on my own terms, free from the burden of their deceit and manipulation, for the time being. Reddit, that's enough for now. I appreciate all of your guidance and help during this journey. I feel like I'm now beginning to see things more clearly, even though it's been a difficult journey.